The wedding dress felt like a shroud. Elena Carter stood at the altar, every instinct screaming that this was wrong. The man waiting for her, Adrian Volkov, wasn't a groom. He was a predator in an expensive suit, and she was the price her father paid to stay alive. One signature, one vow. And she'd belong to a world where debts were settled in blood, where women were currency, and where escape meant death. This is the story of how I became a monster's wife and learned to bite back. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stay until the end. You won't believe where this goes. The organ music was all wrong. Elena knew it the moment the first notes shuddered through the cathedral. Too slow, too heavy, like a funeral march dressed up in white satin. Her fingers trembled against the bouquet of white roses, their thorns pricking through the ribbon wrap her mother had tied that morning. Her mother, who'd cried and said nothing useful. Her father, who wouldn't meet her eyes. "It's time, sweetheart." Her father's voice cracked on the endearment, and Elena wanted to slap him. "Don't call me that," she whispered. "Not today." Richard Carter looked every one of his 56 years in that moment, gray-faced, hollow-eyed, wearing his best suit like it might save him. It wouldn't. Nothing would. He'd gambled away his construction company, then his house, then his dignity, and when the debts came due and the collectors stopped being polite, he'd offered the only thing he had left, his daughter. "Elena, please." "I said don't." She jerked her arm free from his grip. "You don't get to ask me for anything ever again. You sold me. At least have the decency to shut up about it." The doors opened. Light poured in from the cathedral's main hall, and Elena saw them, row after row of strangers in dark suits, watching her with the cold assessment of people who understood exactly what kind of transaction this was. No friends, no family beyond her parents, just witnesses to a contract sealed in flesh. And at the end of that impossibly long aisle, waiting beside a priest who looked too scared to be holy, stood Adrian Volkov. He didn't smile, didn't pretend. He just watched her approach with eyes the color of winter ice, his expression carved from granite and patience. 6'3" of controlled menace in a black suit that probably cost more than her father's last car. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on currency or wanted posters. Beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, all clean lines and sharp edges. Elena had seen him twice before. Once in her father's study when the deal was made and she wasn't allowed to speak. Once yesterday when he'd come to meet his bride and instead spent 20 minutes having her examined like livestock by a woman who checked her teeth and asked invasive questions about her health. He hadn't touched her either time, hadn't even spoken directly to her. That was somehow worse than if he'd been crude about it. Her heels clicked against marble as she walked. Each step felt like descending into cold water. Ankles, knees, waist, chest. By the time she reached the altar, she could barely breathe through the pressure. Adrian extended his hand. Elena stared at it. Broad palm, long fingers, a silver ring on his right hand engraved with something she couldn't read. No wedding band yet. That was coming. "Miss Carter," he said quietly. His voice was deep, accented with something Eastern European that rounded his consonants. "Shall we begin?" Not a question, a formality. She placed her hand in his and felt his fingers close, firm, warm, inescapable. The priest cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved." "Skip it," Adrian said without looking at him. "The legal parts only." The priest's Adam's apple bobbed. "Of course, Mr. Volkov." It took 4 minutes. 4 minutes to sign away her future, to speak vows she didn't mean to a man she didn't know, to become Mrs. Adrian Volkov in the eyes of the law and whatever dark powers governed his world. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Adrian leaned in close enough that Elena could smell his cologne, something expensive and cold, like winter forests, and whispered against her ear, "Don't make a scene. You'll only embarrass yourself." Then he pressed his lips to hers, brief and controlled, before straightening and turning to face the assembled witnesses. Applause rippled through the cathedral, polite, measured, bloodless. Elena stood there in her wedding dress, her hand still trapped in Adrian's, and understood with perfect clarity that she'd just been buried alive. The reception was worse. It was held at some exclusive hotel Elena had never heard of, in a ballroom that dripped crystal and cold elegance. ice sculptures, champagne towers, a string quartet playing something Russian and mournful. The guests were the same strangers from the cathedral, plus a few additions. Women in designer dresses that cost more than Elena's college tuition. Men who moved like predators even when they were standing still. Adrian's world. His people. Elena sat at the head table beside her new husband, untouched champagne going flat in front of her, while various guests approached to offer congratulations that felt more like condolences. "Beautiful ceremony," said a woman with knife-sharp cheekbones and a diamond necklace that could probably buy a small country. She looked at Elena the way someone might look at a new car. "You're very fortunate, dear," Elena smiled with her teeth. "That's one word for it." The woman's expression froze, then cracked into something like amusement. "Oh, she has fire. How delightful." She turned to Adrian. "I approve. Much better than the Kozlov girl. That one cried through the entire first month." "What happened to her?" Elena asked before she could stop herself. "She learned." The woman patted Elena's hand with fingers heavy with rings. "Or she didn't. Either way, she's not around to complain anymore." She drifted away before Elena could process whether that was a threat or just a statement of fact. Adrian hadn't reacted to the entire exchange. He was working his way through a plate of food with methodical precision, occasionally nodding to someone across the room, but otherwise ignoring the celebration of his own wedding. "Do you talk?" Elena asked finally. "Or do you just collect wives and stare at walls?" He set down his fork with deliberate care. "I talk when there's something worth saying." "And I'm not worth saying anything to?" "You're upset. Anything I say right now you'll take as an insult or a threat." He reached for his water glass. "Better to let you adjust first." "Adjust?" Elena laughed, and it came out sharp enough to cut. "Is that what you call this? An adjustment period? What would you call it? Kidnapping? Human trafficking? Slavery, maybe, if we're being honest?" Adrian finally looked at her directly, and the full weight of his attention was like standing in a spotlight. "You're not a slave, Mrs. Volkov. You're my wife. There's a difference." "Is there?" "A slave can be sold. A wife—" He paused, something cold flickering behind his eyes. "A wife is permanent." The words hit like a fist to the chest. Elena opened her mouth, then closed it, because what could she possibly say to that? "Dance with me." Adrian stood, extending his hand again. "I don't want to dance with you. I don't care. People are watching, and you will smile and dance and play the role you agreed to when you signed those papers." His voice never rose, never sharpened, but the command in it was absolute. "Stand up, Elena." She thought about refusing, thought about making a scene, screaming, running, but where would she go? Her father had signed her over. She had no money, no allies, no plan, and the way every eye in the room had turned toward them told her that defiance here wouldn't mean freedom. It would just mean punishment. Elena stood. Adrian led her to the dance floor, one hand settling at her waist, the other capturing her hand in a grip that was almost gentle. Almost. The quartet shifted to a waltz. "You're angry," he said as they began to move. He was a good dancer, no surprise there, probably had lessons from childhood, along with firearms training and advanced intimidation techniques. "Congratulations on your observational skills. Anger is useful. It means you haven't given up." His thumb traced a small circle against her waist, and Elena fought not to flinch away. "Give up, and you become boring. I have no use for boring. What do you have use for?" She met his eyes, forcing herself not to look away. "A decoration? A punching bag? A breeding mare?" Something almost like amusement crossed his face. Such a dark imagination. "I'm standing in a room full of criminals at a wedding I didn't choose. My imagination seems pretty realistic right now." "These aren't criminals," Adrian corrected softly. "They're businessmen. The business just happens to involve territory, influence, and occasionally violence." "Oh, well, as long as it's occasional violence." "Elena," he said her name like a warning. "You can hate me. You can hate this. But you need to understand something very clearly." He pulled her closer, until she could feel the solid wall of his chest against hers, until his breath stirred her hair. "Your father owed me $3 million. He couldn't pay. By the rules of our world, that meant I could take his life, his business, everything he owned. Instead, I took you." "How generous." "It was." No irony in his voice, just flat statement. Because you're worth more than $3 million, and we both know it. Smart, educated, beautiful. Your father's one successful investment. So yes, this is a transaction, but it's not the worst one you could have gotten. Elena stopped dancing. They were in the center of the floor now, surrounded by swaying couples, but she didn't care. You're telling me I should be grateful? I'm telling you that gratitude or hatred doesn't matter. You're mine now. You can make that easy or hard, pleasant or painful. Those are your only real choices. What if I choose neither? What if I just wait for my chance and run? Adrian smiled then, really smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing she'd seen all day. Then I'll find you. And when I do, you'll learn why everyone you've met today speaks to me with such respect. He released her so suddenly she stumbled. Enjoy the rest of the reception, wife, he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. I have business to attend to. He walked away, leaving her alone in the middle of the dance floor while the music played and people pretended not to stare. Elena stood there, her wedding dress heavy as chainmail, and realized she'd just met the real Adrian Volkov. She was going to have to be smarter if she wanted to survive him. The penthouse was a fortress. They arrived just after midnight, Adrian's convoy of black SUVs pulling into an underground garage beneath a building that scraped the sky. Elena had been silent for the entire ride, watching the city lights blur past while Adrian worked on a laptop, making her existence easy to forget. Now, as an elevator carried them up, 47 floors, according to the display, she felt her stomach drop with more than just velocity. This is home, Adrian said when the doors opened directly into a sprawling living space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, modern furniture in shades of gray and black, art that was probably priceless, everything cold, expensive, perfect, a cage with a view. Your room is through there. He pointed to a hallway. Your things have already been moved. You'll find clothes, toiletries, everything you need. My things? Elena turned on him. I didn't pack anything. I came straight from my apartment to the ceremony this morning. I had people pack for you yesterday. We inventoried your belongings, brought what was worth keeping, discarded the rest. The casual invasion of it, strangers going through her life, deciding what she got to keep, made her voice shake. You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife. What's yours is mine, including your privacy. He shrugged off his suit jacket, draping it over a chair. Get used to it. And what's yours? Is that mine too? No? Just that. No explanation, no justification, just no. Elena walked to the windows, pressing her palm against the glass. It was cool to the touch, reinforced, probably bulletproof. Of course it was bulletproof. Men like Adrian Volkov didn't live in places that could be breached by something as simple as a bullet. There are guards, he continued, loosening his tie. 3 in the building lobby, 2 on this floor, more in rotation. You won't see them unless there's a problem. There are cameras in all common areas, not your bedroom or bathroom. I'm not a voyeur. But everywhere else, someone is watching. Prison rules. Safety rules. He poured himself a drink from a bar cart. Whiskey. Neat. You are now a target, Elena. Every rival, every ambitious lieutenant, every 2-bit gang looking to make a name, they'll see you as my weakness. They'll try to use you against me. Then maybe you shouldn't have married me. Maybe. He took a sip, studying her over the rim of the glass. But I needed a wife, and your father needed his debt cleared. Efficient. Everything's a transaction with you, isn't it? Everything's a transaction with everyone. Most people just lie about it. He set down his glass. I'm going to my office. You should sleep. Tomorrow, we begin your education. Education in what? How to survive. He paused at a doorway. His domain, she assumed, the parts of this place she wasn't allowed. How to be useful. How to stay alive in a world that will eat you whole if you're weak. And if I don't want to learn? Adrian looked back at her, and in his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen before. Not cruelty, exactly, but absolute certainty. Then you'll die. Maybe not today, maybe not this year. But eventually, your ignorance will kill you, and I'd prefer not to have to replace you so soon. He disappeared through the door, leaving Elena alone in her new prison. She stood there for a long time, watching the city breathe below her. Millions of lights, millions of lives, all of them free in ways she no longer was. Then she walked to her assigned room, found her clothes hanging in a closet beside designer dresses she'd never chosen, and methodically destroyed the first thing she touched. A silk blouse, torn to ribbons, with shaking hands. It didn't make her feel better. It didn't change anything. But it was hers, and in that moment, that mattered. Elena didn't sleep. She lay in bed, a massive thing with sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and stared at the ceiling while her mind ran through escape plans that all ended the same way, with her caught, punished, or dead. At 3 a.m., she gave up pretending to rest and explored her room. Walk-in closet full of clothes that weren't hers but apparently were now. Bathroom with marble counters and a shower big enough for 4 people. A vanity with makeup she didn't wear, jewelry she didn't want, perfume bottles lined up like soldiers. And in the nightstand drawer, a phone. Elena grabbed it, hope flaring, then dying when she realized it was locked to only certain numbers. Adrian's cell. Someone labeled security. An emergency line. That was it. No internet access, no ability to call her friends, her mother, anyone from her old life. She hurled it across the room. It bounced off the wall and clattered to the floor, screen intact because of course it had a military-grade case. Bulletproof phone for the bulletproof prison, she muttered. A soft knock on her door made her freeze. Mrs. Volkov, a woman's voice, accented but clear. May I enter? Elena didn't answer, but the door opened anyway. Because of course it did. Because she didn't get to control even this small thing. The woman who entered was maybe 60, gray hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing a simple black dress. She moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd spent a lifetime in service. I am Irina, she said. I manage the household staff. I came to see if you need anything. My freedom? Irina's expression didn't change. Something within my power to provide, Mrs. Volkov. Elena laughed, bitter and sharp. Of course. Stupid question. She sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. Why are you really here? Mr. Volkov asked me to check on you. He mentioned you might be struggling with the transition. Struggling. That's a nice word for it. Irina moved to the window, drawing the curtains with practiced ease. I have worked for the Volkov family for 32 years. I have seen many things, many changes. May I offer you some advice? Do I have a choice? No. Irina turned, and her eyes, dark, sharp, knowing, held something like sympathy. Do not fight battles you cannot win. Do not waste energy on gestures that change nothing. Save your strength for the moments that matter. And how do I know which moments those are? You'll know. She moved toward the door, then paused. Mr. Volkov is not his father. That is important to remember. What does that mean? It means there are worse prisons than this one, worse husbands than him. Irina's hand rested on the doorknob. It means you could use your anger to destroy yourself, or you could use it to become something more dangerous than he expects. The choice, in that at least, is yours. She left before Elena could respond. Elena sat in the dark, Irina's words circling her mind like birds of prey. Become something more dangerous than he expects. What did that even mean? She was a 26-year-old woman with a degree in art history and 0 survival skills for this kind of life. What danger could she possibly pose to a man like Adrian Volkov? But as she finally drifted towards sleep, an idea began to form. Small, fragile, probably stupid. If she couldn't escape this world, maybe she could learn to navigate it, learn its rules, its power structures, its weaknesses. Become fluent in the language of violence and control that these people spoke, not to love it, not to accept it, but to survive it long enough to find her way out, or to burn it down from the inside. What? Morning came with shocking punctuality. At exactly 7 a.m., Irina knocked again, this time bearing a tray with breakfast, coffee, toast, eggs prepared the way Elena liked them, which meant someone had been paying very close attention to her life before yesterday. Mr. Volkov expects you in his study at 9 o'clock, Irina said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. Dress appropriately. What does appropriately mean in mobster wife terms? Professional, conservative, you're meeting with people who will judge you on sight. Irina's tone was matter of fact, not unkind. The gray suit in your closet, simple jewelry, hair up. Elena wanted to refuse on principle, but something in Irina's expression stopped her. This wasn't a request from Adrian. This was advice from a woman who knew how this world worked. She ate, she showered, she put on the gray suit, which fit perfectly, because of course it did, and styled her hair into a neat bun. Minimal makeup. Pearl earrings that had been her grandmother's, one of the few personal items that had made the cut when Adrian's people ransacked her life. At 8:55, she left her room and found her way to Adrian's study. The door was open. Inside, she could hear voices. Adrian's low rumble and someone else, older, speaking rapid Russian. Elena knocked on the doorframe. The conversation stopped. Adrian looked up from his desk, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or approval. It was gone too quickly to name. "Elena," he said. "Come in." She entered, taking in the room, more windows, more expensive furniture, walls lined with books in multiple languages. And standing beside Adrian's desk, a man who looked like he'd been carved from old wood and cigarette smoke. "This is Constantine," Adrian said, "my head of security. Constantine, my wife." Constantine looked her over with eyes that missed nothing, then grunted something in Russian. Adrian replied in the same language, his tone sharp. Constantine shrugged and switched to English. "I said she's too soft. This won't work." "Thank you for your assessment," Elena said before Adrian could respond. "I'm sure it's based on your extensive experience being a woman in a world designed to break her." Silence. Then Constantine laughed, a rough grudging sound. "Maybe not completely soft." He turned to Adrian. "She'll need training, real training, not just etiquette bullshit." "I know." "And protection. Full detail when she leaves the building." "Already arranged." Constantine nodded, then walked past Elena toward the door. He paused just close enough to murmur, "Don't trust anyone. Not even him. Especially not him." Then he was gone. Elena turned to find Adrian watching her with something like curiosity. "You didn't hide," he said. "Hide from what?" "Constantine. He's deliberately intimidating. Most people flinch. Most people haven't had their entire life stolen in a single day." Elena crossed her arms. "I'm running low on flinch." Adrian almost smiled. "Good. You'll need that." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit. We have a lot to discuss." Elena sat, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. "My education, you mean?" "Exactly." He opened a folder, slid a photograph across the desk. "Do you know who this is?" Elena looked at the image. A man, maybe 40, handsome in a slick way, smiling at some gala event. "No." "His name is Viktor Kozlov. He runs the drug trade in the Northern Territories. He's ambitious, connected, and he hates me." "I'm sure you have that effect on a lot of people." "I do." Adrian pulled out another photo. "This is Dmitry Sokolov, arms dealer, old-school vor, thinks I'm too young and too soft. He'd love to see me dead." More photos, more names, more enemies. "Why are you telling me this?" Elena asked finally. "Because these men, and a dozen others I haven't shown you yet, will be at a gathering tomorrow night. A business meeting disguised as a party. You will be there, at my side, representing my household." He leaned back in his chair. "And they will test you. They will probe for weakness, for ignorance, for any sign that I made a poor choice in a wife. If they find it, they will use it. Use it how? To undermine me. To suggest I'm weak, distracted, losing control." His eyes held hers. "In this world, perception is everything. Show weakness, and you become a target. Show strength, and you earn respect, or at least hesitation." Elena felt her stomach tighten. "So I'm not just your wife, I'm a chess piece." "You're both. Welcome to the game." She stared at the photograph spread across his desk. All these dangerous men, all watching, all waiting for her to fail. "What happens if I can't do this? If I embarrass you?" Adrian's expression went cold. "Then we both suffer the consequences. Me, in lost standing and increased challenges to my authority. You," he paused, "in ways I'd prefer to avoid." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting." He gathered the photos back into the folder. "Irina will help you prepare. Learn names, faces, connections. Study the hierarchy. Understand who has power and who only thinks they do. And then what? I smile and nod while men who traffic in death and drugs decide if I'm acceptable? No. Adrian stood, moving to the window. Against the morning light, he was all sharp angles and shadows. You do something much harder. You make them believe you belong there, that you chose this life, that you're exactly where you want to be. That's a lie. All power is a lie, Elena. The only question is whether you're good enough to sell it. He turned back to her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something other than cold control in his expression, something that might have been respect or at least interest. You have intelligence, he said quietly. I saw that in your father's study when we first met. The way you watched, analyzed, kept silent when most would have screamed. You have self-control, or you wouldn't have made it through yesterday without breaking. And you have anger. A slight smile. So much anger. I can use that. You can use that. To do what? To survive. To adapt. To become someone these men can't dismiss or destroy. He moved closer until only the desk separated them. I didn't choose you because you were weak, Elena. I chose you because I saw potential for something else. Something useful. I'm not interested in being useful to you. Not yet. But you will be. Because it's the only way you'll ever have any power in this life. He tapped the folder. Learn this. Master it. Tomorrow night, show them you're more than just another terrified girl sold to pay her father's debts. And if I refuse, then they'll eat you alive, and I'll have to find a replacement. He said it without malice, just stating facts. Your choice. Elena looked at the folder, at the faces of men who'd apparently built careers on violence and cruelty. Men who would judge her, test her, try to break her. She thought about Irina's words. Save your strength for the moments that matter. This was a moment that mattered. Fine, she said, reaching for the folder. I'll play your game, but don't mistake my cooperation for acceptance. I wouldn't dream of it. Adrian moved toward the door. One more thing. What? Don't embarrass me tomorrow night. His voice dropped, taking on an edge that made her skin prickle. Because if you do, the consequences won't just fall on you. They'll fall on your father, your mother, everyone you've ever cared about. That's how this world works. Weakness in one person becomes a vulnerability in everyone connected to them. Elena's hands tightened on the folder. You're threatening my family. I'm explaining the rules. What you do with that information is up to you. He left her sitting there, surrounded by photographs of dangerous men, understanding with perfect clarity that she'd just been given both a test and a threat. Tomorrow night, she would either prove herself capable of surviving this world, or she would prove Adrian right to think she was disposable. Elena spent the next 24 hours trying to memorize faces she wanted to forget. Viktor Kozlov, drug lord, ambitious, hates Adrian. Dmitry Sokolov, arms dealer, thinks Adrian's too young. Alexei Petrov, human trafficking, connects to the eastern ports. Sergei Volkov, Adrian's uncle, resentful about being passed over for leadership. On and on until the names blurred together into a catalog of violence wrapped in expensive suits. Irina drilled her relentlessly, testing her on connections, alliances, old grudges that simmered beneath the surface of every handshake. Kozlov's daughter married Petrov's nephew. What does that tell you about their alliance? Sokolov lost territory to Adrian 3 years ago. How does that affect his behavior tonight? Questions with answers that all pointed to the same conclusion. Everyone in that room would be looking for an advantage, and she was a walking opportunity to find one. By the time evening arrived, Elena's head throbbed, and her stomach was a knot of anxiety she couldn't untangle. The dress is ready, Irina said, appearing in the doorway of Elena's room. She held a garment bag like it contained something sacred or dangerous. Elena unzipped it and stopped breathing. The dress was deep emerald green, floor-length, with a neckline that managed to be both modest and devastating. Silk that would catch light with every movement. Elegant, expensive, impossible to ignore. I can't wear this, Elena said. It's too much. It's exactly enough. Irina laid the dress across the bed with careful hands. You're walking into a room full of predators. Dress like prey, and they'll treat you like prey. Dress like you belong, and some of them might hesitate before they bite. Some of them. We take what we can get. Irina produced a jewelry box, opening it to reveal a necklace that made Elena's breath catch. emeralds and diamonds in a setting that probably cost more than her father's debt. This was Adrian's mother's. He wants you to wear it. Elena's hand hovered over the necklace. Why? Because it sends a message that you're not just his wife, you're family, protected. Irina's voice softened slightly. In this world, symbols matter. This symbol might keep you alive. Elena let Irina fasten the necklace around her throat, feeling the weight of it settle against her skin like a collar. Beautiful and binding all at once. 2 hours later, she stood in front of a mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress fit like it had been made for her body specifically, because it probably had been. Her hair was swept up in an intricate style that Irina had created with quick, efficient hands. Makeup that enhanced without overwhelming. And the necklace, catching light with every breath, announcing her value in carats and precious stones. She looked like she belonged in Adrian's world. The realization made her want to tear it all off. He's waiting, Irina said quietly. Elena found Adrian in the living room, checking his phone with the distracted air of someone managing an empire. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, his dark hair swept back, a watch on his wrist that was all understated wealth. He looked up when she entered, and something shifted in his expression, gone too quickly to identify, but it had been there. You clean up well, he said, pocketing his phone. Thanks. You too. Elena smoothed the dress, suddenly self-conscious. Irina said this necklace was your mother's. It was. He moved closer, adjusting the clasp slightly. His fingers were warm against her neck. She wore it to every important gathering, made sure everyone remembered she wasn't just my father's wife. She was Volkov family, pure bloodline, old connections. It mattered to her. Past tense? She died 6 years ago. Cancer. He stepped back, studying her with that analytical gaze she was starting to recognize. You look good. Nervous, but good. I am nervous. I'm about to walk into a room full of criminals who want to see me fail. Not all of them want to see you fail. Some just want to see if you're worth their time. He offered his arm. Either way, we're late. Time to find out which category most of them fall into. Elena took his arm because she had to, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric, and let him lead her toward the elevator. The car ride was silent. Adrian worked on his phone while Elena watched the city slide past, trying to calm her racing heart. They pulled up to a mansion that looked like it belonged in a different century, all stone and iron gates, security everywhere, valet parking for cars that cost 6 figures. Remember, Adrian said as they approached the entrance, you're not here to make friends. You're here to make them think twice before they treat you like a weakness. No pressure. His hand settled at the small of her back, possessive and steadying in equal measure. You'll be fine. Just follow my lead and don't let them see you scared. The doors opened and they walked into a world Elena had only seen in movies. The gathering was held in a ballroom that dripped old money and new violence. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, waiters circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than Elena used to spend on groceries. And everywhere, dangerous people pretending to be civilized. Elena recognized faces from the photographs. Viktor Kozlov holding court near the bar, surrounded by younger men who laughed too loudly at his jokes. Dmitry Sokolov in conversation with someone Elena didn't recognize, both of them looking like they were negotiating a war. Women in designer dresses with eyes that calculated worth in seconds. Adrian, a woman's voice, sharp as cut glass. Elena turned to find herself facing a woman who could have been carved from ice. Platinum hair, pale skin, a dress that was more suggestion than fabric. She looked at Adrian like he was something she owned, then at Elena like she was something that had crawled out from under a rock. Katya, Adrian said, his tone neutral. You look well. I look expensive, darling. There's a difference. Katya's smile was all teeth. And this must be the new wife. How quaint. Elena felt Adrian's hand tighten slightly at her back. A warning or a reassurance, she couldn't tell. Elena, Adrian said, this is Katya Romanov. She handles our Eastern European connections. Connections? Katya repeated, amused. Such a polite way to say I own half the smuggling routes into the Baltic states. She looked Elena up and down. So you're the one who replaced the Kozlov arrangement. Viktor must be furious. The Kozlov arrangement? Elena asked before she could stop herself. Oh, he didn't tell you. Katya's smile widened. Victor's daughter was supposed to marry Adrian, forge an alliance, consolidate territory, all very strategic. But then your father's debt came up, and Adrian decided a Carter was worth more than a Kozlov. She leaned in conspiratorially. Between you and me, I think he just wanted to avoid marrying someone who'd been sleeping with half his lieutenants. Katya. Adrian's voice was soft, but it carried weight. Walk away. Always so serious. But she did walk away, trailing expensive perfume and malice. Elena waited until she was gone before speaking. Was that true? About the Kozlov daughter? Partially, there were discussions. Nothing formal. Adrian guided her toward a quieter corner. Victor wanted the connection more than I did. When I married you instead, he took it as an insult. So I didn't just marry into your world, I made you an enemy in the process. You didn't make me anything. That was my choice. He caught the eye of a passing waiter, procured 2 glasses of champagne, handed her one. Drink, it'll help. Elena took a sip, feeling the bubbles burn down her throat. How many people in this room want to kill you? Kill me? Probably a third. Undermine me? Most of them. Actually have the capability to do either? Maybe 5 or 6. He said it like he was discussing the weather. It's a normal Tuesday in my world. Your world is insane. Yes, but it's profitable, and profit buys loyalty, or at least compliance. He nodded toward someone across the room. Here comes one of the 5 who actually matters. Remember what Irina taught you. A man approached, early 60s, silver hair, wearing a suit that screamed old money. He moved with the careful dignity of someone whose power was so established he didn't need to prove it. Adrian, the man said, his accent placing him somewhere in Russia's upper class. I was beginning to think you'd avoid us entirely. Dmitri. Adrian shook his hand. Never, just fashionably late. Fashionably. Dmitri's eyes moved to Elena, and she felt herself being assessed with the precision of someone who'd built a career on reading people. And this is the bride who caused such a stir. Elena Volkov, Adrian said, my wife. Elena, this is Dmitri Sokolov. Elena extended her hand, remembering Irina's coaching. Firm grip, eye contact, don't look away first. Mr. Sokolov, I've heard a lot about you. Have you? Dmitri took her hand, holding it a moment longer than necessary. All terrible things, I hope. The good things are just rumors. He smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. Tell me, Mrs. Volkov, are you finding married life agreeable? It was a trap. Elena could feel it, the way the question hung in the air waiting for her to stumble into it. Say yes, and she looked naive. Say no, and she made Adrian look weak. I'm finding it educational, she said carefully. I've learned more in 2 days than most people learn in years. Diplomatic. Dmitri released her hand. Your father never had that quality. Richard Carter was many things. Gambler, optimist, fool, but diplomatic wasn't among them. The casual cruelty of it, the way he dismissed her father as a fool while standing in a room full of people who'd profited from his failure, made Elena's jaw tighten. My father made mistakes, she said, keeping her voice level. But he paid for them. That's more than can be said for some people. Silence. Dmitri's expression shifted, something like surprise flickering across his features. Adrian's hand pressed against her back. Warning or approval, she still couldn't tell. Then Dmitri laughed. She has teeth. Good. You'll need them in this family. He turned to Adrian. I approve. Much better than that weeping Kozlov girl would have been. There seem to be strong opinions about the Kozlov girl, Elena said. Because she represents everything wrong with the new generation, Dmitri said dismissively. Soft, sheltered, useless, you at least have the look of someone who might survive. He paused. We'll see if the look matches the reality. He drifted away, leaving Elena feeling like she'd just passed a test she hadn't known she was taking. Not bad, Adrian murmured. Dmitri doesn't approve of much. You got further with him in 2 minutes than most people manage in years. Is that because I impressed him, or because he thinks I'll be entertaining when I fail? Both, probably. Adrian steered her toward another group. Come on, more introductions. Try not to insult anyone who can have us killed. That's a depressingly short list of people I can insult. The next hour was a blur of names and faces, each introduction a careful dance of power and positioning. Elena met Viktor Kozlov, who looked at her like she'd personally stolen something from him, and his daughter Irina, who was younger than Elena and clearly miserable. She met Adrian's uncle Sergei, who smiled warmly and said things that sounded kind but felt like threats. She met arms dealers and drug lords and people whose business cards probably just said crime and left it at that. And through it all, she felt them watching, judging, waiting for her to crack. It was exhausting. "I need air," she told Adrian finally, when the walls felt too close and the champagne had stopped helping. He glanced around, calculating something. "The terrace. 5 minutes, then we come back." The terrace was blessedly empty, cool night air washing over Elena's overheated skin. She gripped the stone railing, looking out over manicured gardens that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. "You're doing well," Adrian's voice came from behind her. "Better than I expected. Your expectations must have been low." They were realistic. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Most people break faster, cry, make scenes, embarrass themselves. You're holding it together. Is that supposed to be a compliment? It's an observation. He was quiet for a moment. Katya was testing you earlier. So was Dmitri. They'll all test you in their own ways. Some with words, some with actions. You need to be ready. I am ready. I've been studying your criminal flashcards for 24 hours straight. That's not the kind of ready I mean. Adrian turned to face her fully. These people, they don't just want to see if you know their names. They want to see if you understand what you've married into. If you can handle the reality of it. The reality of what? Murder? Extortion? Human trafficking? Elena met his eyes. I'm standing in a room full of people who've built empires on suffering. Trust me, I understand the reality. Do you? He stepped closer. Because understanding it academically and living it are different things. You can memorize all the names you want, but when someone puts a gun to your head because they want to send me a message, all that knowledge won't mean anything. Has that happened before? Someone putting a gun to a wife's head? Yes. No hesitation, no softening, just brutal honesty. Twice. Both times the wives didn't survive long enough to regret their husbands' choices. Elena's stomach dropped. And you're telling me this now because you need to understand what's at stake. This isn't a game, Elena. This is survival. His hand came up, brushing a strand of hair from her face in a gesture that was almost gentle. You want to hate me? Fine. You want to fight me every step? I can work with that. But you need to be smart about it, because the moment you show real weakness in front of these people, they will destroy you to get to me. Then maybe you should have married someone stronger. Maybe. His thumb traced her jawline, and Elena fought not to pull away. Or maybe I married someone who could become stronger. That's what we're here to find out. Before Elena could respond, the terrace doors burst open. A man stumbled out, young, maybe 30, bleeding from a cut above his eye. Two larger men followed, and Elena recognized the look on their faces. She'd seen it in nature documentaries, on predators right before they struck. Please, the young man gasped, spotting Adrian. Mr. Volkov, please. One of the larger men grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against the wall hard enough to crack stone. Shut up, Mikhail. You had your chance to pay. Adrian's expression didn't change, but Elena felt him shift, not toward the violence, but into a different version of himself, colder, more dangerous. Grigory, Adrian said calmly. What's the problem? Grigory, one of the men Elena had been introduced to earlier, someone in Viktor's organization, grinned. No problem, just collecting a debt. Mikhail here thought he could skim from the take, thought we wouldn't notice. He pulled out a knife, letting it catch the light. We noticed. The young man, Mikhail, made a choked sound of fear. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was happening. Right here, right now, they were going to hurt this person, maybe kill him, and she was just standing there watching. How much did he take? And Adrian asked, his tone conversational. 15,000. Has he paid it back? Not yet. That's why we're here. Grigory pressed the knife against Mikhail's throat. Making an example. Viktor's orders. Adrian was silent for a long moment. Elena could see him calculating something, weighing options she couldn't begin to guess at. Then he said, "Let him go." Grigory blinked. "What?" "I said let him go." Adrian's voice didn't rise, but something in it changed. "Mikhail works in one of my warehouses. That makes him mine. Victor doesn't get to make examples of my people without asking first." "With all respect, Mr. Volkov, Victor outranks you in—" "Victor outranks no one in my territory." Adrian moved forward, and Elena saw why people were afraid of him. He didn't have to raise his voice or make threats. He just existed, and everything else bent around that existence. "Tell Victor that if he wants to discipline my employees, he comes to me first. Otherwise, he's questioning my authority, and we both know how that conversation ends." Grigory's grip loosened slightly. "He's not going to like this." "He doesn't have to like it. He just has to respect it." Adrian gestured toward the doors. "Now, leave. Take your friend with you, and tell Victor I'll be by tomorrow to discuss proper protocol." For a moment, Elena thought Grigory might argue. Then he shoved Mikhail toward the ground and stalked back inside, his companion following. Mikhail stayed on his knees, breathing hard, blood dripping onto expensive stone. "Thank you," he gasped. "Thank you, I swear I'll pay it back. I just needed—" "You'll pay it back to me," Adrian interrupted. "With interest. 20%. 20... Mikhail's face went pale. "That's 3,000 more. Would you prefer I let Grigory finish his work?" Adrian's tone was pleasant, but his eyes were ice. "Make your choice quickly. I'm losing patience." No, I'll pay. 20%, I'll pay." "Good." Adrian turned away, dismissing him. "Clean yourself up. Be at my office Monday morning. We'll discuss payment terms." Mikhail scrambled to his feet and disappeared inside. Elena stared at Adrian, her mind reeling. "You just saved his life." "I protected my authority. That's not the same thing." "You charged him $3,000 for the privilege of not being murdered. I charged him market rate for a loan with extremely favorable terms, considering his other option was death." Adrian straightened his cuffs. "Welcome to my world, Elena. This is how business works when the courts can't enforce contracts." "That's not business. That's extortion." "Yes, it is." He met her eyes, unflinching. "And now you've seen it up close. Still think you can handle this reality?" Elena's hands were shaking, from fear or anger or just the adrenaline crash, she wasn't sure. "I think you're all monsters." "We are." Adrian offered his arm again. "Come on, we've been gone too long. People will talk." She didn't take his arm, couldn't make herself touch him after watching him turn someone's near death into a business transaction. Adrian waited, patient as stone. Finally, Elena forced herself forward, keeping space between them as they walked back inside. The party continued like nothing had happened. Music, laughter, the gentle clink of expensive glasses. And Elena understood with sick certainty that moments like what she'd just witnessed were normal here. Unremarkable. Just another Tuesday in Adrian Volkov's world. They made it another hour before the real trouble started. Elena was trapped in conversation with a woman who managed some kind of money laundering operation when she felt Adrian tense beside her. She followed his gaze to see Viktor Kozlov making his way toward them, his daughter Irina trailing behind him with the resigned expression of someone who knew this would end badly. "Adrian," Viktor said loudly enough to draw attention, "we need to talk." "Then talk." Adrian's tone was neutral, but Elena felt the shift in the room, people turning to watch, conversations dying mid-sentence. "Not here. In private." "I'm comfortable here." Victor's jaw tightened. He was handsome in a brutal way, all sharp edges and aggressive energy. "You undermined my authority tonight, in front of my men." "I enforce my own authority in my own territory. There's a difference. That piece of shit was stealing from me. That piece of shit works in my warehouse, which makes him my responsibility. You want to discipline people who work for me? You ask first." Adrian's voice never rose, but the command in it was absolute. "Those are the rules. You know them. Your rules." Victor stepped closer, and Elena saw his hands clench into fists. "Always your rules. Your territory. Your say." "You're 28 years old, Adrian. Half the people in this room have been in this business longer than you've been alive. And yet I'm the one they answer to. Funny how that works?" The room had gone completely silent now. This was more than a disagreement. This was a challenge, public and dangerous. You think you're untouchable, Victor said, his voice dropping to something ugly. You think Daddy's empire protects you forever. But your father's been dead 3 years, and people are starting to wonder if the son is half the man he was. Adrian smiled then, and it was the most terrifying thing Elena had ever seen. My father built this empire through fear and brutality. I'm building something more sustainable. If you can't see the difference, that's not my problem. It's yours. Sustainable? Victor laughed, harsh and bitter. You married this... He gestured at Elena, and she felt the insult in the movement even before he spoke. This nobody, this daughter of a degenerate gambler, instead of forming a real alliance, you call that sustainable? Elena felt her face burn. Every eye in the room was on her now, judging, calculating. Adrian's hand found her waist, pulling her closer. I call it strategy, something you've never been particularly good at. Strategy. Victor's eyes were on Elena now, cold and assessing. Let's see how strategic it is. Tell me, Mrs. Volkov, do you know what your husband does for a living? It was a trap. Elena could feel it, but she didn't know how to avoid it. I know enough, she said carefully. Do you know about the shipments that come through the eastern ports? The containers full of girls younger than you, sold to the highest bidder? Victor's smile was cruel. That's Alexei's operation, but your husband takes a cut. Does that bother you? Elena's stomach turned. She'd known, abstractly, intellectually, what Adrian's world involved. But hearing it stated so baldly, with such casual cruelty, made it real in a way the photographs and briefings hadn't. Victor, Adrian's voice carried a warning. Or maybe you know about the protection rackets, the small businesses that pay or burn, the families who lose everything because they can't afford Adrian's generosity? Victor was enjoying this, Elena realized, enjoying watching her face as he described horrors. Your husband is very good at what he does, Mrs. Volkov. He just dresses it up in nicer words than the rest of us. That's enough. Adrian moved forward, putting himself between Elena and Victor. You've made your point. Have I? Victor looked past him to Elena. Has she learned yet what it means to be a Volkov wife? That she's complicit in everything now? That her hands are just as dirty as yours? Elena's throat was tight. She wanted to deny it, to say she wasn't part of this, but the necklace around her throat, Adrian's mother's necklace, the symbol of family and protection, felt suddenly like evidence of guilt. My wife, Adrian said softly, understands more than you give her credit for. And she's smart enough to know that moral grandstanding from a man who's trafficked more drugs than most cartels is just theater. At least I'm honest about what I am. You're honest about nothing. You just lack the intelligence to hide it. Adrian's hand settled on Elena's lower back, steadying. This conversation is over. Elena, we're leaving. Running away? Victor called after them. How strategic. Adrian ignored him, guiding Elena toward the exit. But before they reached it, Irina Kozlov, Victor's daughter, stepped into their path. She was small, maybe 22, with dark hair and eyes that held too much knowledge for someone so young. She looked at Elena with something that might have been sympathy. Mrs. Volkov, she said quietly, may I speak with you, just for a moment? Adrian's hand tightened at Elena's back. Not now. Please. Irina's voice was barely above a whisper. Just 1 minute. Elena looked at her. This girl who was supposed to have been Adrian's wife, who'd been rejected in favor of a nobody, and saw something desperate in her expression. 1 minute, Elena said, pulling away from Adrian's grip. He didn't like it. She could see that in the way his jaw tightened, but he stepped back, giving them space while staying close enough to intervene. Irina leaned in, her breath warm against Elena's ear. Get out, she whispered. However you can, whatever it takes. Get out before it's too late. Elena pulled back, searching the other woman's face. What are you talking about? I was supposed to marry him. My father wanted the alliance, wanted the power. I begged him not to make me do it. Irina's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I thought I was being saved when Adrian chose you instead. But now I see what you are. Someone like me, trapped by men who see us as tools. So I'm telling you what no one told me. Run, before you become one of them. Irina! Victor's voice cracked across the room. Get over here, now! Irina flinched but didn't move. Please, she whispered, don't end up like the others. What others? Elena asked, but Irina was already backing away, her moment of courage spent. Adrian appeared at Elena's side. Time to go. This time Elena didn't argue. She let him lead her out through the crowd of watching faces into the cool night air where their car waited. They didn't speak during the ride home. Adrian returned to his phone, managing his empire, while Elena stared out the window and tried not to think about Irina's warning or Victor's accusations or the way her hands felt dirty despite never having touched anything worse than champagne. Back in the penthouse, Elena headed straight for her room, desperate for space, for silence, for anything that wasn't this. Elena. Adrian's voice stopped her. She turned, exhausted. What? You did well tonight. He said it simply, without fanfare. Better than well. You held your ground when most people would have broken. Victor described human trafficking operations while looking me in the eye, and you're congratulating me for not running away screaming. Yes. Because in this world, that counts as strength. He moved closer. I know what Irina said to you. You were listening. I'm always listening. It's how I stay alive. He stopped a few feet away, maintaining distance. She's not wrong, by the way. This life will change you. Already has, if you're honest with yourself. The question is whether you'll adapt or break. And if I break, then I'll find someone who won't. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing a business decision. But I don't think you'll break. I think you're stronger than you know, than you want to admit. Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. You don't know anything about me. I know you could have stayed silent tonight when Victor attacked me. Could have let him win the confrontation by showing doubt or fear. Instead, you stood there and let him see that you weren't impressed by his theatrics. Adrian's eyes held hers. That was smart, strategic, exactly what I needed you to do. I didn't do it for you. I know. You did it for yourself because you understood that showing weakness would make you a target. He smiled slightly. That's even better. Self-preservation is a much stronger motivator than loyalty. Is that what this is? You teaching me self-preservation? Among other things, he turned toward his office. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start the real education. What's that supposed to mean? He paused in the doorway, looking back. Tonight was observation. Tomorrow, you start participating. Welcome to the family business, Elena. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the vast, cold penthouse with only her thoughts and the weight of a dead woman's necklace for company. Elena made it to her room before her hands started shaking, made it to the bathroom before the nausea hit. She gripped the edge of the sink, staring at her reflection, this woman in an expensive dress with perfect makeup and jewelry worth more than lives, and barely recognized herself. Get out before it's too late. Irina's words echoed in her head, mixing with Victor's descriptions of trafficking and violence, with Adrian's casual acceptance of brutality, with her own growing realization that she was becoming complicit just by existing in this world. But where would she go? Her father had sold her. Her old life was gone. And Adrian's reach, she'd seen enough tonight to know it extended far beyond this penthouse, this city. He would find her. He'd said as much. So what did that leave? Elena looked at herself in the mirror and made a decision. Not to run, not to break, but to learn. To understand this world well enough to find its weaknesses. To become strong enough that when her moment came, and it would come, she'd be ready. She'd play Adrian's game, learn his rules, let him think she was adapting, becoming useful, exactly what he wanted. And then, when he least expected it, she'd find her way out. Or burn his empire down trying. Either way, she was done being the helpless victim in someone else's story. It was time to write her own ending. The education Adrian promised began at 6 in the morning with Constantine banging on her door like he was trying to break it down. Up, he barked through the wood. We start in 20 minutes. Elena dragged herself out of bed, her body still heavy with exhaustion from the night before. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying Victor's accusations and Irina's warning on an endless loop. Now she had 19 minutes to become whatever version of herself could survive Constantine's idea of training. She found him in a room she hadn't known existed, a gym tucked into the lower level of the penthouse, complete with equipment that looked military-grade and mats that had seen serious use. Constantine was already there, wearing track pants and a look of profound skepticism. "You know how to fight?" he asked without preamble. "I took a self-defense class in college," he snorted. "So no." He tossed her a pair of gloves. "Put these on." "We're boxing? We're learning how not to die like an idiot." He moved to the center of the mat. "Come at me." Elena stared at him. "You want me to attack you?" "I want you to try. There's a difference." When she didn't move, he sighed. "Look, girl, you're married to one of the most dangerous men in this city. That makes you a target. Someone will try to use you against him, and when they do, you need to be able to do more than scream and hope for rescue. Adrian has guards everywhere. Guards die. Guards get bribed. Guards make mistakes." Constantine's expression was hard. "You want to bet your life on someone else's competence? Be my guest. But I've seen what happens to women in your position who can't protect themselves, and it's not pretty." Elena thought about Irina's desperate warning, about the other wives Dmitri had mentioned, the ones who didn't survive. She pulled on the gloves. "Good," Constantine said. "Now hit me." She threw a punch, awkward, uncertain, barely connecting with his shoulder. He didn't even flinch. Again, harder. Another punch, slightly better. Then another. Constantine corrected her stance, her grip, the way she pivoted her hips. For 30 minutes he drilled her on basic strikes until her arms burned and sweat soaked through her shirt. "Enough," he finally said. "Now defense." He came at her without warning, not fast enough to actually hurt her, but quick enough to be terrifying. Elena stumbled backward, trying to remember the self-defense moves from that college class, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Within seconds, she was on her back on the mat, Constantine's hand at her throat in a grip that was firm but not crushing. "Dead," he announced. "If I wanted you actually dead, you'd be dead." He released her, offering a hand up. "You freeze when you're scared. That's a problem." "I wasn't expecting you to actually attack me." "No one expects an attack until it's happening. That's the point." He gestured for her to get up. Again. They went through it 5 more times. 5 more times Elena ended up on her back, her heart racing, her instincts all screaming wrong things. On the 6th attempt, though, something shifted. Constantine came in low, reaching for her waist, and Elena's body remembered something from that long-ago self-defense class. She twisted, brought her elbow down hard on his shoulder, and for half a second she was free. Then he swept her legs, and she was down again, but this time she'd made him work for it. "Better," Constantine said, and it sounded almost like approval. "You've got decent instincts when you stop thinking. We can work with that." They trained for another hour, basic holds, how to break them, where to strike to cause maximum damage if someone grabbed her. By the time Constantine called it quits, Elena could barely lift her arms. "Same time tomorrow," he said, tossing her a towel. "And the day after. You're going to hate me, but you'll be harder to kill. Fair trade." Elena wanted to argue, but her body hurt too much for words. She dragged herself upstairs, took a shower that was half standing, half leaning against the wall for support, and emerged to find Irina waiting with breakfast and a small white pill. "For the pain," Irina explained. "Constantine doesn't believe in gentle starts." Elena swallowed the pill dry, then attacked the food like she'd been starving. "Does everyone in this house know my schedule before I do? Mr. Volkov plans everything. You'll get used to it." Irina poured coffee. "He wants to see you at 10. His office." Of course he did. Elena found Adrian exactly where Irina said he'd be, standing at his window with a phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Russian to someone who apparently didn't like what they were hearing. He gestured for her to sit without breaking conversation, his tone shifting from patient to hard in the span of 3 words. The call ended abruptly. Adrian pocketed his phone and turned his full attention to Elena. "How was training?" "Brutal. I'm pretty sure Constantine wants to kill me." "If he wanted to kill you, you'd be dead. He's teaching you to be less killable. There's a difference." Adrian sat across from her, studying her face. "You're angry." "I'm tired. There's a difference." A slight smile. "Fair enough." He slid a tablet across the desk. "I need you to look at something." Elena picked it up, finding herself staring at architectural plans, warehouses, shipping routes, what looked like a distribution network. "What am I looking at?" "A problem." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "Victor's been moving product through my territory without clearance. Small amounts, nothing worth a war over, but enough to test whether I'll enforce boundaries. And you want to enforce them, too. I want you to help me figure out how. He pulled up another screen, this one showing financial records. Victor's operation relies on 3 main distribution points. If we disrupt those, we cut his revenue by 40%. But a direct attack means escalation, and escalation means bodies. Elena looked at him. Why are you telling me this? But, Bull, because last night you proved you can think strategically under pressure, and because I'm curious whether that extends beyond social situations. He stood, moving to a wall map covered in colored pins, territories she realized marked and divided like a war game. Victor insulted you publicly. By the rules of our world, that gives you standing to respond. You want me to help you punish him for calling me a nobody? I want to see if you can identify leverage points in a complex system. Adrian tapped the map. This isn't about revenge. It's about maintaining authority through calculated pressure. Can you do that? Elena studied the map, her mind working despite her exhaustion. Victor's operation, Adrian's territory, the overlapping spaces where conflict could brew or be avoided. She traced the shipping routes with one finger, finding the choke points, the places where small changes could cascade into larger problems. Here, she said finally, pointing to a warehouse on the eastern edge. This is where his supply chain crosses through your docks. You don't need to shut him down, just slow him down. Inspections, delays, bureaucratic problems that cost time and money but can't be traced directly to you. Adrian moved closer, following her reasoning. Go on. And here, she indicated another location. This distribution hub serves 3 of his major clients. If those clients suddenly had better offers from your operations, they'd switch suppliers. Victor loses revenue and reputation, and it looks like market competition instead of retaliation. What about the third point? Elena hesitated. The third distribution center was in neutral territory, governed by complicated agreements she only half understood. I don't know enough about the politics there. Good answer. Better to admit ignorance than guess wrong. Adrian was studying her with renewed interest. You see the system. Most people just see individual pieces. I used to work in project management before. She stopped, the before hanging heavy in the air. Before her father's gambling destroyed everything. Before she became collateral. Before, Adrian finished quietly, you coordinated complex logistics for construction projects. I know. I read your employment history. At her sharp look, he shrugged. I told you, I research my investments. Is that what I am? An investment? Among other things. He turned back to the map. Implement your plan. Start with the dock inspections. Move to the client outreach. Report back in 3 days. Elena blinked. You're serious. You actually want me to do this. You identified the strategy. You should execute it. He met her eyes. Welcome to your new job, Mrs. Volkov. Think you can handle it? Every instinct screamed that she should refuse, that getting involved in Adrian's business meant crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But another part of her, the part that had spent last night feeling powerless while men discussed her like property, wanted to prove she was more than decoration. I can handle it, she said. Then get started. Constantine will assign you someone to help with logistics. Adrian returned to his desk, already moving to the next item on whatever endless list governed his days. And Elena? What? Don't make me regret trusting you with this. The word settled like a weight. Trust. As if that's what this was. As if he'd given her responsibility instead of a test designed to see if she'd fail spectacularly. Elena left his office with the tablet and a growing sense that she'd just agreed to something that would either save her or damn her completely. The next 3 days blurred into a strange new rhythm. Mornings with Constantine, learning how to fight, how to fall, how to hurt someone if her life depended on it. Afternoons coordinating with Adrian's people, a logistics manager named Pavel who treated her with careful respect, a dock supervisor who took her instructions without question, lawyers who drafted inspection orders that would hold up to scrutiny. It was terrifying how easily it came together, how quickly she adapted to speaking the language of territory and leverage, how natural it felt to find weakness in Victor's operation and exploit it with surgical precision. On the 3rd day, Pavel reported that the first inspections had delayed Victor's shipments by 48 hours. 2 of his major clients had accepted meetings with Adrian's representatives. The pressure was building exactly as Elena had designed it. Good work, Adrian said when she reported back. He was in his study, papers spread across every surface, managing a dozen different operations simultaneously. Victor's people are scrambling. He'll figure out it's intentional eventually, but by then the damage will be done. He'll retaliate. Probably. That's expected. Adrian signed something, set it aside. How does it feel? What? Winning. You just hurt someone who hurt you, and you did it smart enough that he can't prove anything. Adrian looked at her. Most people in your position would feel guilty. You don't. He was right, and that scared her more than she wanted to admit. She should feel guilty, should feel horrified at how easily she'd weaponized information against another human being. But all she felt was satisfaction, cold, hard, and disturbingly complete. Maybe I'm adapting, Elena said quietly. Maybe. Adrian's expression was unreadable. Or maybe this was always in you, and you just never had reason to use it before. Before Elena could respond, Constantine appeared in the doorway, his expression tight. We have a problem. Adrian was on his feet instantly. What kind? Alexei Petrov just called. Says Victor's escalating. He's got leverage we didn't know about. Constantine's eyes flicked to Elena. And it involves her family. Elena's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Your mother, Constantine said flatly. Victor's people picked her up an hour ago. He's calling it protective custody, but we all know what it really is. The world tilted. Elena gripped the edge of Adrian's desk. Where is she? One of Victor's properties on the north side. Constantine looked at Adrian. He wants a meeting. You, alone, to discuss terms. Terms for what? Elena demanded, her voice rising. She has nothing to do with this. She's my mother. She's leverage. Adrian was already moving, pulling on a jacket, checking a weapon Elena hadn't known he was carrying. Victor can't strike at me directly without starting a war, so he strikes at what's mine. Basic strategy. Don't you dare make this about strategy, Elena snapped. That's my mother, my actual mother who has done nothing except have the misfortune of being related to me. Adrian stopped, really looking at her. I know. Then do something. I am. He turned to Constantine. Set up the meeting. Tell Victor I'll come alone, but if anything happens to Mrs. Carter, the deal's off, and he gets war instead of negotiation. You can't actually go alone, Constantine protested. It's obviously a trap. Of course it's a trap. But if I don't go, he hurts her to prove a point, and then we're exactly where we didn't want to be. Adrian checked his phone. Set it up for neutral ground, somewhere public enough that he can't disappear me without consequences. Elena's hands were shaking. I'm coming with you. No. She's my mother, which is exactly why you're staying here. Adrian's voice was firm. Victor grabbed her to get to you, to rattle you, to make you emotional and stupid. Don't give him what he wants. So I'm just supposed to wait here while you negotiate for my mother's life like she's a piece of property? Adrian moved closer, his hand settling on her shoulders. Listen to me. Victor is trying to provoke a reaction. From me, from you, from anyone he can use. The moment we act emotional instead of strategic, we lose. So yes, you wait here, you stay calm, you let me handle this. And if you can't handle it, if he hurts her anyway, something dark flickered in Adrian's eyes. Then we stop playing nice, and I show Victor exactly why people are afraid of the Volkov name. He released her. But it won't come to that. Your mother will be home by tonight. He left before Elena could argue further, Constantine following with a string of Russian that sounded like creative cursing. Elena stood in Adrian's study, surrounded by the evidence of his empire, and felt utterly helpless. She'd spent 3 days learning to fight, learning to think like them, learning to hurt people with strategy and precision. And none of it mattered because her mother, her kind, anxious mother who'd cried at the wedding and said nothing useful, was trapped in Victor's custody as punishment for Elena's choices. Irina found her there 20 minutes later, still frozen in place. Mrs. Volkov, she said gently, you should eat something. I can't. Not until I know she's safe. Irina hesitated, then closed the study door. May I tell you something that might help? Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. Mr. Volkov doesn't make promises he can't keep. If he said your mother will be home tonight, she will be. Irina's expression was serious. He's many things, dangerous, calculating, sometimes cruel. but he's not careless with the things he values. And right now, your mother's safety is valuable because you are valuable to him. I'm not valuable. I'm a transaction that went bad. No. Irina shook her head. You're the woman who designed a strategy that hurt Victor without bloodshed. You're the woman who stood in front of this city's most dangerous people and didn't break. Mr. Volkov values competence above almost everything, and you've proven you have it. She paused. That makes you more than a transaction. It makes you useful. And in this world, useful people get protected. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they made Elena feel hollow. Her worth measured in usefulness. Her mother's safety depended on whether Elena continued to prove herself valuable enough to keep. What if I'm not? Elena asked quietly. What if I'm just faking it, and eventually everyone figures out I have no idea what I'm doing? Then you keep faking it until the fake becomes real. Irina's smile was sad. That's what we all do, Mrs. Volkov. We pretend until the pretending becomes truth. Hours crawled past. Elena tried to eat. Couldn't. Tried to distract herself. Failed. She ended up in the gym, attacking a heavy bag with everything she had, using techniques Constantine had taught her, feeling her knuckles bruise inside the gloves, and welcoming the pain because at least it was something she could control. She didn't hear Adrian return. Didn't know he was there until his voice cut through her spiral. Elena. She spun, fists still raised, breathing hard. Adrian stood in the doorway, her mother beside him. Catherine Carter looked shaken but unharmed, her clothes rumpled, her eyes red from crying. Mom! Elena dropped the gloves, crossing the space in seconds. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm fine. Her mother hugged her hard enough to hurt. They took me to this house and made me wait, and I was so scared, but they didn't hurt me. Elena looked over her mother's shoulder at Adrian. What did you give him? Territory on the South Docks, 3 warehouses, and the revenue they generate. His expression was neutral. Victor wanted blood or money. I gave him money. You gave him part of your operation. I gave him enough to satisfy his pride and get your mother back. It was the smart play. Adrian's eyes met hers. She's safe. That's what matters. Catherine pulled back, looking between them. Elena, honey, I don't understand what's happening. Those men said I was being held because of you, because you did something to upset someone. It's complicated, Mom. Complicated? Her mother's voice cracked. Your father ruins our lives. You get married to... She looked at Adrian, fear and confusion warring in her expression. To him, and now I'm being kidnapped because of business I don't understand. How is any of this okay? It's not okay, Elena said quietly. None of this is okay, but it's what we have. Her mother started crying then, real sobs that shook her whole body. Elena held her, making soothing sounds, while Adrian watched from the doorway with an expression that might have been discomfort. Irina will set up a room for your mother, he said finally. She can stay here until it's safe for her to go home. When will that be? Elena asked. When Victor understands that touching her again means consequences he can't afford. Adrian turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened. It wasn't part of the plan. None of this was part of the plan, Elena said, her mother still crying in her arms. But we're all living with it anyway. After Adrian left, after her mother had been settled in a guest room with sedatives that Irina promised were safe, Elena found herself back in Adrian's study. He was there, working through paperwork like the evening's crisis had been just another item on his endless to-do list. You gave up territory, Elena said without preamble. Real territory, real revenue, for my mother. I gave up less than I would have lost fighting a war over it. Basic math. That's not why you did it. Elena moved closer. You could have negotiated harder, could have given him less. But you didn't. Why? Adrian set down his pen. You want me to say it was altruism? That I care about your mother's well-being? I want you to tell me the truth. He was quiet for a long moment. I told you your mother would be safe. If I'd failed to deliver on that promise, you would have stopped trusting anything I say. Trust is valuable. The territory was expensive, but trust is worth more in the long run. He met her eyes. That's the truth. I didn't save your mother because I'm a good person. I saved her because I need you to believe I keep my word. Elena should have been angry. Should have been disgusted at the transactional nature of it, the way he'd turned even this into a calculation of value and leverage. Instead, she felt something shift inside her. Not trust exactly, but understanding. Adrian operated according to rules she was only beginning to learn, but at least those rules were consistent, predictable. He'd said her mother would be safe, and he'd made it true. Whatever the cost. That was more than most people had given her. "Thank you," she said quietly. Adrian looked surprised. "For what?" "For keeping your word, even if it was just strategy." Elena moved toward the door, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "And for not pretending it was anything else." She was almost out when his voice stopped her. "Elena?" "Yeah?" "You did well today, staying calm while I handled Victor. That took control most people don't have." "I didn't feel calm. I felt terrified. That's the point. You were terrified, and you didn't show it. You didn't make it worse." He paused. "You're learning faster than I expected. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "Depends on what you do with it." Adrian returned to his paperwork. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we deal with the fallout." Elena left him there, surrounded by the machinery of his empire, and went to check on her mother one more time before collapsing into her own bed. The fallout Adrian mentioned arrived at dawn in the form of Constantine waking her with news that Victor had called a meeting of the council, an assembly of the major players in their underworld, the people who govern through consensus and carefully maintain balances of power. "He's going to accuse you of weakness," Constantine explained, handing her coffee that was too strong and too bitter. "Claim that giving up territory for one woman proves you're soft, that Adrian's letting personal attachments compromise business decisions." "Is he wrong?" Elena asked. "Doesn't matter if he's right or wrong. Matters if people believe him." Constantine leaned against the doorframe. "The council meets in 3 hours. You need to be there." "Why would I need to be there? This is Adrian's problem." "No, it's your problem. Victor made it about you when he grabbed your mother. Now you have to show them you're worth what Adrian paid to get her back." Elena felt her stomach tighten. "And how do I do that?" "By being smart. By not acting like a victim. By showing them you understand the rules of this world well enough to play by them." Constantine's expression was serious. "Adrian's betting his reputation that you can hold your own in that room. Don't make him look like a fool." The council met in a private room at a restaurant that probably laundered more money than it served food. Elena walked in beside Adrian wearing a suit that Irina had selected. Severe, professional, armor disguised as fashion. The room was full of familiar faces from the party, plus a few new ones, all of them watching her with varying degrees of interest and contempt. Victor was already there, looking smug. "Adrian, Mrs. Volkov, so glad you could join us." "Victor." Adrian's tone was neutral as he took his seat at the large table. Elena sat beside him, keeping her spine straight, her expression calm. "Let's get this over with. I have actual business to attend to." "This is actual business," Victor said. "Specifically the business of whether you're still capable of leading effectively." Dmitry Sokolov spoke up from across the table. "That's a strong accusation, Victor. You want to explain what you mean?" "I mean that Adrian gave up 3 profitable warehouses and the revenue they generate. For what? For one woman who has no strategic value, no connections worth protecting." Victor's smile was sharp. "That's not leadership. That's sentiment. And sentiment gets people killed in our world." "He gave up territory to avoid a war," Elena said before Adrian could respond. "That's not sentiment. That's mathematics." Victor turned his attention to her. "And what would you know about it, Mrs. Volkov? You've been in this world for what, a week? Long enough to understand that wars are expensive and often unprofitable." Elena kept her voice level. Adrian chose to pay a price that hurt less than sustained conflict would have. If that's sentiment, then every business deal you've ever made is sentiment too. A business deal involves mutual benefit. This was extortion, which you initiated by taking my mother. Elena leaned forward slightly. "You created a situation where Adrian had 2 choices, pay your price or start a war that would cost both of you far more than 3 warehouses are worth. He chose the cheaper option. How is that weakness?" Victor's expression hardened. "You don't get to speak in this council. You're not a member. Neither are half the wives in this city, but I don't see you lecturing them about protocol." Elena felt Adrian's hand settle on her knee under the table. A warning or encouragement, she couldn't tell. You wanted to make this about me, Victor. You grabbed my mother specifically to prove Adrian values me more than he should. Well, here I am. Make your case. The room had gone quiet. Elena could feel every eye on her, calculating, judging. My case, Victor said slowly, is that Adrian's judgment is compromised, that he's making decisions based on personal attachment rather than what's best for our collective interests. Our collective interests, Dmitri mused. Tell me, Victor, when you grabbed Mrs. Carter, did you consult the council first? Or did you act unilaterally and then bring it here when Adrian responded in a way you didn't like? Victor's jaw tightened. That was a separate matter. It was the same matter, Dmitri cut him off. You provoked a conflict without council approval, got a response you considered inadequate, and now you're trying to use our authority to justify your own miscalculation. He looked at Adrian. The boy gave up territory to avoid bloodshed. In my day, we called that wisdom, not weakness. In your day, respect meant something, Victor shot back. Adrian disrespected me. You disrespected yourself, Elena interrupted. She knew she was pushing her luck, knew that speaking out of turn again might cost her, but the anger burning in her chest wouldn't be contained. You tried to use an innocent woman as leverage, and when Adrian outmaneuvered you by paying your price without hesitation, you got embarrassed. Now you're here trying to make your embarrassment everyone else's problem. Victor stood abruptly. You don't know what you're talking about. Sit down, Victor. Adrian's voice wasn't loud, but it carried absolute command. She's right, and you know it. You made a play, I countered. You didn't like the result. That's business. Stop pretending it's anything else. For a long moment, Victor stood there, fury written across his face. Then Dmitri spoke again. The council finds no evidence of compromised judgment. Adrian responded to an unauthorized provocation with measured restraint. Matter closed. His eyes swept the room, daring anyone to object. Unless someone else wants to waste our time with petty grievances? Silence. Victor sat down slowly, his expression promising that this wasn't over. The meeting dissolved after that, business moving to other topics, territories, shipments, disputes that needed arbitration. Elena sat through it all, her heart racing, her hands clenched in her lap where no one could see them shake. When it finally ended, when the various players filed out with their bodyguards and calculations, Dmitri paused beside Elena's chair. That was either very brave or very stupid, he said quietly. I haven't decided which. Does it matter? Elena asked. Not really. Either way, you made an impression. He glanced at Adrian. She's got fire. Don't let it burn you both. After he left, Adrian turned to Elena. That was risky. I know. Victor will remember it. Good. Let him remember that I'm not afraid of him. Elena stood, her legs unsteady but holding. You said I needed to show them I wasn't weak. I showed them. You did more than that. Adrian studied her face. You backed Victor into a corner in front of the entire council. That takes either courage or recklessness, and I'm still not sure which you have more of. Maybe both. A slight smile. Maybe. He offered his arm. Come on. We're done here. They walked out together, past Victor's cold stare, past the watching eyes of people who would report every word back to their own bosses. Outside, the morning sun was bright enough to hurt, and Elena felt the adrenaline crash hitting hard. I think I'm going to throw up, she said conversationally. Wait until we're in the car. Throwing up on council ground sends the wrong message. Elena laughed, sharp, slightly hysterical. Wouldn't want to compromise your reputation with vomit. Exactly. But Adrian's hand was steady at her back as he guided her to the waiting car, and when they were safely inside with the doors closed, he said, You did well in there, better than most people would have done. I probably just made everything worse. You made Victor look small. That's not worse. That's progress. Adrian's phone buzzed and he checked it with a frown. Though you're right that there will be consequences, Victor doesn't forgive public humiliation. What kind of consequences? The kind we'll handle when they come. He typed out a quick response to whatever message had arrived. For now, you should rest. You've earned it. But Elena wasn't tired. Despite the adrenaline crash, despite everything, she felt wired, alive in a way she hadn't since before the wedding. She'd faced down Victor in front of the most dangerous people in the city, and she'd held her ground. It should have felt wrong. Should have felt like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. Instead, it felt like winning. and that scared her more than anything Victor could do. The consequences came faster than Elena expected. 3 days after the council meeting, she woke to find the penthouse in lockdown. Guards everywhere, Constantine barking orders into his phone, Irina pale and tight-lipped as she delivered breakfast Elena couldn't eat. "What's happening?" Elena demanded, finding Adrian in his office surrounded by laptops and grim-faced men she didn't recognize. "Victor's making his move." Adrian didn't look up from the screen. "Get dressed. We're relocating within the hour." "Relocating where?" "Somewhere safer than here." He finally met her eyes. "He's coming for us, Elena. Not directly. He's smarter than that. But through channels that are harder to defend against." Constantine appeared at her elbow. "We need to move. Now." The safe house turned out to be a compound outside the city. Old money architecture hiding new money security. Walls, cameras, guards, with automatic weapons trying to look casual. Elena's mother was already there, looking small and frightened in a living room that cost more than most houses. "What's going on?" Catherine asked when Elena found her. "They came and got me before dawn. Wouldn't explain anything." "We're being careful," Elena said, the lie tasting like ash. "There's been some business complications." "Business?" Her mother's laugh was bitter. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Before Elena could answer, an explosion rocked the compound. The windows rattled. Alarms screamed. Elena hit the floor instinctively, her mother screaming beside her, and heard Constantine shouting orders in Russian. "Stay down!" Adrian appeared from nowhere, weapon drawn, his expression carved from ice. "Constantine! Sit rep! Perimeter breach south wall. 3 vehicles, armed hostiles." Constantine was moving toward the sound of gunfire. "They're testing our response. Or they're distracting us from the real attack." Adrian grabbed Elena's arm, hauling her to her feet. "Basement. Now. Take your mother." "What about you?" "I'm ending this." He shoved them toward a hallway. "Move!" Elena dragged her mother through corridors that all looked the same, following Irina, who'd appeared like a ghost with directions to the panic room. Behind them, gunfire echoed, sharp cracks that made her mother sob, and Elena's training with Constantine kick in. Low profile, move fast, don't freeze. The panic room was reinforced steel disguised as a wine cellar. Irina sealed them inside with a key code, and suddenly the chaos was muffled, distant. "We're safe here," Irina said, though her hand shook. "This room can withstand anything short of military ordnance." "What about Adrian?" Elena's heart was racing. "What about the guards?" "Mr. Volkov knows what he's doing. He's been preparing for something like this since Victor's threat became clear." Irina pulled out a tablet, accessing security feeds. "See? They're already pushing the attackers back." Elena watched the screens. Grainy footage of men in tactical gear exchanging fire with Adrian's security team. She spotted Adrian himself moving with lethal precision, putting down threats with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Many times before. Her mother was crying in the corner, and Elena wanted to comfort her but couldn't look away from the screens. This was Adrian's world stripped of pretense. No expensive suits or coded language, just violence and survival. The attack lasted 17 minutes. When Constantine finally opened the panic room door, his face was streaked with smoke and something that might have been blood. "Clear. They're retreating." "Casualties?" Adrian's voice rough with adrenaline. "2 of ours wounded, none critical. 5 hostiles down, 3 captured." Constantine's expression was grim. They weren't trying to win. They were sending a message. Message received. Adrian appeared in the doorway, and Elena's breath caught. He was disheveled, his shirt torn, a cut above his eyebrow bleeding sluggishly. But alive. Whole. "Everyone okay?" "We're fine." Elena moved toward him before she could stop herself, her hands reaching to check the cut. "You're hurt." "Barely. I've had worse from Constantine's training sessions." But he let her touch him, let her examine the wound with shaking fingers. "Your mother?" Terrified, confused, probably hating both of us. Elena's voice cracked. "Adrian, this is insane. Victor just attacked us with actual soldiers. Mercenaries, there's a difference." Adrian caught her hands, stilling them. "And yes, it's insane. It's also expected. I humiliated him at the council. You made him look weak. He had to respond or lose face completely." "So what now? We just wait for him to attack again?" "No." Adrian's eyes went hard. Now we stop playing defense and make him regret starting this. The war room, because that's what it was, Elena realized, had been set up in the compound's basement. Maps, photographs, digital displays showing Victor's operations in real time. Adrian's inner circle gathered there. Konstantin, Dmitry Sokolov, who'd apparently been summoned immediately, Pavel, the logistics manager, and a woman Elena hadn't met who introduced herself as Anya and didn't explain what she did. Options, Adrian said without preamble. Direct strike on his primary residence, Konstantin suggested. Send a message that matches his. Too predictable. He'll be expecting retaliation. Dmitry was studying the maps. We need something that hurts him strategically, not just personally. His drug operation, Pavel offered. We could expose it to federal authorities, let them do the heavy lifting. That risks exposing our own operations. Anya's voice was cool, analytical. Anything that brings law enforcement into our business is a net loss. They argued for 20 minutes, each option dissected and discarded. Elena sat in the corner watching, trying to understand the calculus of violence they were debating so casually. Then something occurred to her. Something from the intelligence briefings Irina had made her study, combined with what she'd learned about Victor's personality. What if we don't hit his operations? She said quietly. Everyone turned. Explain, Adrian said. Elena stood, moving to the display showing Victor's network. Everything you're suggesting attacks his business, his money, his power. But Victor's not just greedy, he's proud. That's what made him grab my mother. That's what made him attack us today. She traced connections on the screen. His daughter, Irina Kozlov. She's supposed to marry Alexei Petrov's nephew next month, right? Consolidate their alliance? Yes, Dmitry confirmed. It's been planned for months. Why? Because I met Irina at the party. She's miserable. She doesn't want the marriage, doesn't want any of this. Elena looked at Adrian. What if we offered her a way out? Konstantin frowned. You want to what? Kidnap Victor's daughter? That's not kidnap, rescue. Give her asylum, protection, a choice. Elena's mind was racing now, seeing the angles. Victor's entire alliance with Petrov depends on that marriage. If Irina disappears, if she publicly refuses and we protect her, the alliance collapses. Petrov loses faith in Victor's ability to control his own family. Victor loses face, loses strategic position, loses the one thing he values more than money, respect, silence. Then Anya laughed, sharp and surprised. That's vicious. I like it. It's risky, Dmitry said, but he was nodding. If we pull it off, Victor's damaged without a single shot fired. If we don't, we've kidnapped a council member's daughter and started a war we might not win. We're already in a war. Adrian was watching Elena with something like admiration. Victor made that clear today. The question is whether we fight it his way or ours. He turned to Anya. Can we make contact with Irina Kozlov without Victor knowing? I can try. She's watched closely, but she's not a prisoner. Not yet. Anyway. Do it, carefully. Adrian's attention came back to Elena. And if she says yes, if she wants out, then we extract her. Clean, quiet, no violence unless absolutely necessary. Elena felt her heart pounding. And we make sure everyone knows she chose to leave, that Victor couldn't even keep his own daughter loyal. The psychological damage alone would be significant, Pavel mused, combined with the collapse of the Petrov alliance. It could work, Konstantin admitted grudgingly. Assuming the girl cooperates and we can get her out without Victor's people intercepting. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, make it happen. Anya, reach out to Irina. Konstantin, plan the extraction. Pavel, prepare safe housing that can't be traced back to us. He looked at Elena. And you just designed an operation that could reshape the power structure of this entire city. Hope you're ready for the consequences. Elena met his gaze steadily. I'm ready, but she wasn't. Not really. Because 3 days later, when Anya confirmed that Irina Kozlov was desperate to escape and willing to risk everything for freedom, Elena realized she'd just committed to destroying a young woman's entire life to save her own position. The extraction was planned for the night before Irina's wedding. Maximum chaos, maximum embarrassment for Victor. Konstantin had mapped the route, the timing, the backup plans for when things went wrong. Because things always went wrong, he kept saying, like a mantra. Elena wasn't supposed to be involved. Adrian had been clear about that. But when the night came, when the team was assembling, she found herself in Constantine's equipment room pulling on body armor. "No," Constantine said flatly when he found her. "I'm going." Adrian said, "I don't care what Adrian said. This was my idea. Irina's trusting me. I should be there." Elena adjusted the vest, trying to look competent. "Besides, she knows me. She'll trust me more than she'll trust a bunch of armed strangers. She'll trust us to get her out alive. That's all that matters." But Constantine was wavering. "If you get hurt, Adrian will kill me. If I don't go and something happens to her, I'll kill myself." Elena met his eyes. "I need to do this. Please." Constantine swore in Russian. "Fine. But you follow orders exactly. You stay behind me at all times, and if I say run, you run. Clear?" "Clear." Adrian found out 10 minutes before they left. Elena was checking equipment she barely knew how to use when his voice cut through the preparation noise. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" She turned to find him in the doorway, fury written across every line of his body. "I'm going with them." "The hell you are." "Irina knows me. She'll be scared, confused. Having a familiar face will help." Elena stood her ground even as Adrian moved closer, radiating anger. "This was my plan. I should see it through." "Your plan involved strategy, not fieldwork. You're not trained for this." "I've been training with Constantine for 2 weeks. 2 weeks doesn't make you a soldier." Adrian grabbed her arm. "You go out there. You become a liability. Someone Constantine has to protect instead of focusing on the mission." "I can protect myself." "Can you?" Adrian's grip tightened. "Can you shoot someone if they're between you and escape? Can you make decisions in seconds that might mean life or death? Can you watch people die and keep moving?" Elena pulled free. "I don't know. But I know Irina's scared and alone and trusting me to help her. I'm not going to let her down because you think I'm too weak to handle your world." "This isn't about weakness." "Yes, it is. You still see me as the girl who got sold to pay her father's debts, the wife you have to protect and manage." Elena's voice rose. "I'm not that person anymore. You made sure of that when you dragged me into your business, made me learn your rules, turned me into someone who could design an operation like this. So don't act surprised when I want to see it through." Adrian stared at her, jaw tight. Then he turned to Constantine. "She goes, 'She's your responsibility. Anything happens to her.' I know, you'll kill me slowly." Constantine didn't sound concerned. "She'll be fine. I'll make sure of it." Adrian looked back at Elena, and something in his expression had shifted. Not approval exactly, but maybe acceptance. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't." He left without another word, and Elena let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "You're lucky he didn't lock you in the panic room," Constantine muttered. "Come on, we're already behind schedule." The extraction point was a charity gala, Irina's last public appearance before the wedding. Victor would be there, watching her, making sure she played her role perfectly, which meant security would be tight, eyes everywhere, escape routes limited. Elena rode in the van with Constantine's team, listening to them run through the plan in terse Russian and English. She was supposed to make contact with Irina during a bathroom break, confirm she was ready, then create a distraction while Constantine's people got her out through the service entrance. Simple, clean. Nothing could go wrong. Everything went wrong. They made it to the gala without incident. Elena, dressed in evening wear that hid the communication device in her ear, moved through the crowd like she belonged there. She spotted Victor near the bar, playing the proud father, one hand possessive on Irina's shoulder. Irina looked like a porcelain doll about to shatter. Elena caught her eye, gave the signal they'd arranged. Irina's hand went to her necklace. Acknowledgement. 10 minutes until the bathroom meeting. But before those 10 minutes elapsed, Alexei Petrov appeared at Victor's side with a man Elena didn't recognize. They spoke in urgent whispers, and she saw Victor's expression change, confusion shifting to suspicion. "Constantine," she murmured into her calm. "Something's wrong. Victor just got information about something." "Copy. Stand by." Elena watched Victor scan the crowd, his eyes moving with predatory focus, looking for something, or someone. Then his gaze landed on her. Recognition, calculation, rage. "Abort!" Constantine's voice crackled in her ear. "Abort now! He made you." But it was too late. Victor was moving toward her, 2 bodyguards flanking him, and Elena knew running would only confirm whatever suspicion he had. She held her ground. Mrs. Volkov? Victor's smile was all teeth. What a surprise to see you here. Does your husband know you're attending events without him? Adrian trusts me to manage my own schedule. Elena kept her voice level. Is there a problem? That depends. Are you here to enjoy the charity auction, or are you here to interfere in my family's business? I don't know what you mean. No? Victor stepped closer, his voice dropping. Because I just received interesting information about someone trying to make contact with my daughter, someone offering her protection if she wants to leave her fiancé. Elena's heart hammered, but she didn't let it show. Sounds like your daughter has options. Good for her. Victor's hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. You think you're clever. You think you can turn my own child against me, embarrass me again, and walk away laughing. Let go of me. Elena's voice was cold. Now. Or what? You'll call for help? You're in my world now, little girl. These are my people, my territory. You've got no power here. The bodyguards moved closer. Elena saw Irina watching from across the room, her face pale with terror. People were starting to notice the confrontation, starting to stare. Last chance, Elena said quietly. Let go, or find out exactly what Adrian will do when he learns you put your hands on his wife. Adrian's not here, and by the time he figures out what happened, you'll be insurance against whatever stupid plan you've cooked up. Victor's grip tightened. Take her. The bodyguards reached for her. Elena moved. 2 weeks of Constantine's brutal training, muscle memory overriding fear. She twisted, broke Victor's grip, drove her elbow into the nearest bodyguard's solar plexus. He went down gasping. The second guard grabbed for her, and she used his momentum against him, exactly like Constantine had taught her, sending him stumbling into Victor. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Elena ran, not toward the exit, that's where they'd expect her to go. Instead, she headed deeper into the venue, toward the service corridors Constantine had mapped. Behind her, Victor was shouting orders, his security team mobilizing. I'm blown, she gasped into her comm. Need extraction. Working on it. Get to position 3. Position 3 was a loading dock. Elena sprinted through kitchens where staff scattered out of her way, down a hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner, her heels abandoned somewhere behind her. She could hear pursuit, heavy footsteps, angry Russian. The loading dock door was ahead. Elena hit it at full speed, expecting to find Constantine's van. Instead, she found Victor's daughter, standing alone in the dim light with a packed bag at her feet. I couldn't wait, Irina said, her voice shaking. He knows. He knows everything. He was going to lock me in my room until the wedding. How did you... Service stairs. I've been planning this for weeks. I just needed someone to run to. Tears streaked her makeup. Please, please get me out of here. The door behind them burst open. Victor and 4 guards, weapons drawn. Irina! Victor's voice cracked with fury and something that might have been pain. Step away from her. Now. No. Irina's voice was small but steady. I'm done, Papa. Done being your bargaining chip. Done pretending I want this life. I'm leaving. You're not leaving. You're getting married in 2 days, and then you're going to be exactly what I raised you to be. A transaction? A tool? Irina's laugh was bitter. I'm a person, Papa, and I choose to leave. You don't get to choose. Victor raised his weapon, pointing it at Elena. You come home right now, or Mrs. Volkov pays for poisoning your mind against your family. Elena's hands went up slowly. No weapon, no backup that she could see, just her and a terrified girl against 5 armed men. This was how it ended. She'd been so focused on the plan, on being useful, on proving herself, that she'd walked straight into a trap. Then headlights flooded the loading dock. 2 vehicles, moving fast, doors opening before they'd fully stopped. Constantine and his team pouring out with weapons that made Victor's people look under-equipped, and Adrian stepping out last, his expression carved from ice and fury. Victor! Adrian's voice cut through everything. Put the gun down. This is my daughter. And that's my wife you're threatening, which means you've got about 5 seconds to decide if Irina's worth dying over. Victor hesitated. His guards were looking nervous, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. She's my family, Victor said, but his voice had lost its certainty. She's an adult who's making a choice. You can accept that and walk away, or you can start something you won't survive. Adrian moved closer, and Elena saw the weapon in his hand, held with the casual competence of someone who used it regularly. What's it going to be? For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Irina spoke, her voice stronger than Elena had ever heard it. I'm leaving, Papa. With or without your permission. You can shoot them, shoot me, but I'm still leaving because I'd rather die free than live as your property. Something broke in Victor's expression. He lowered the weapon slowly, and Elena saw it. The moment he realized he'd lost. Not just the confrontation, not just his daughter, but the respect he'd been so desperately clinging to. You'll regret this, he said, but it sounded hollow. Maybe. Irina picked up her bag. But it'll be my regret, not yours. She walked toward Elena with her head high, and Elena took her hand, leading her toward Adrian's vehicles. Behind them, Victor stood in the loading dock surrounded by his guards, looking smaller than Elena had ever seen him. They were almost to the vehicles when Victor called out one last time. Adrian, this isn't over. Adrian didn't even turn around. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. The safe house they took Irina to was different from the compound. Smaller, quieter, designed for someone who needed to disappear rather than defend. Elena sat with her in a bedroom that was nice enough to be comfortable but sparse enough to be temporary, while the younger woman cried with relief and terror in equal measure. What happens now? Irina asked when she could speak again. Now you rest. Tomorrow we start building you a new life. New identity, new city if you want it, enough money to start over. Elena brushed hair from Irina's face. You're free. That's what happens now. He'll come after me. He'll try. Adrian will make sure he fails. Elena's voice was certain. You're under our protection now. That means something. After Irina finally fell asleep, Elena found Adrian on the safe house balcony, smoking a cigarette with the desperate focus of someone who rarely indulged. You smoke? She asked. Not usually. Tonight seemed like an exception. He offered her the cigarette. You did well back there. Kept your head when most people would have panicked. I did panic, I just didn't show it. Elena took a drag, coughed. This is disgusting. Yes. That's why I don't usually smoke. He took it back. Victor's finished. The council will hear about tonight. How he pulled a weapon on another member's wife. How his own daughter chose exile over family. He'll have no credibility left. What about the Petrov alliance? Dead in the water. Alexei's not stupid enough to chain himself to a sinking ship. Adrian flicked ash over the railing. You destroyed Victor with one operation. No bloodshed, no war, just strategic precision. That's more impressive than anything I've done this year. Elena leaned against the railing, exhaustion finally catching up. I didn't do it alone. No, but you designed it, convinced us to try it, made it work even when everything went sideways. He stubbed out the cigarette. You're not the same person who walked down that aisle 3 weeks ago. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Ask me in a year. Adrian turned to face her. But I know you're more than I expected, more than I bargained for when I married you. What did you bargain for? Someone manageable, predictable, someone who'd fill a role and stay quiet. His smile was wry. Instead, I got someone who argues with council members, designs operations that reshape power structures, and runs headfirst into danger to keep promises to people she barely knows. Disappointed? Terrified, actually. But he said it like a compliment. You're becoming dangerous, Elena, to Victor, to our enemies, maybe even to me eventually. Should I apologize? No. Adrian moved closer. You should own it, because dangerous people survive in this world. Weak ones don't. He was close enough now that Elena could feel his warmth, smell the cigarette smoke and expensive cologne. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. What are we doing? She asked quietly. I don't know. His hand came up, fingers tracing her jawline with unexpected gentleness. But I think we're becoming something neither of us planned for. Partners? Maybe. Or something more complicated. His thumb brushed her lower lip. Something that's going to make everything harder and more dangerous, and probably get us both killed. Elena's breath caught. She should pull away, should maintain distance, remember that this was still a transaction, still a prison, even if the bars were made of strategy instead of steel. But when Adrian kissed her, really kissed her, Not the cold formal press from their wedding, but something hungry and desperate. She kissed him back, and hated herself for wanting it. They broke apart when Constantine's voice crackled over the intercom. "Boss, we've got a problem." Adrian pulled away, his expression shifting from whatever that moment had been back to pure calculation. "What kind?" "The kind where Victor's not taking this lying down. He's mobilizing his people. Looks like he's planning something big." Adrian swore. "I'll be right there." He looked at Elena. "This isn't over." "I know." He left her on the balcony, and Elena stood there for a long time, her lips still burning from the kiss, her mind already planning for whatever fresh hell Victor was about to unleash. Because Adrian was right, she was becoming dangerous. She just hoped she was becoming dangerous enough to survive what came next. Victor's retaliation came at dawn in the form of coordinated strikes across Adrian's entire operation. Elena woke to chaos. Alarms, shouting, Constantine's team mobilizing while Adrian barked orders into 3 phones simultaneously. She pulled on clothes and found him in the war room, surrounded by screens showing fires at 2 warehouses, police raids at 3 others, and what looked like a full-scale assault on one of his primary distribution centers. "How bad?" she asked. "Bad." Adrian didn't look away from the screens. "Victor's burning everything he can't take. He's got law enforcement in his pocket, hitting our legitimate fronts, and his own people hitting everything else. He's trying to collapse the entire operation in one night." "Can he?" "If we don't stop him, yes." Adrian finally turned to her. "This is scorched earth. He knows he's finished, so he's taking me down with him." Elena studied the screens, her mind cataloging the damage. "He's spread too thin. Look, he's hitting 8 targets simultaneously. That means his forces are divided, his attention scattered. He can't defend everything at once." "Neither can we. We don't need to defend. We need to cut off the head." Elena moved closer to the tactical display. "Where's Victor right now?" Constantine answered. "His estate, fortified, heavily guarded. He's directing everything from there. Then that's where we go." Elena looked at Adrian. "While he's focused on destroying your empire, we take him out of play, end him, and his people lose coordination. The attacks fall apart." "That's suicide," Constantine protested. "His estate is a fortress. We'd need an army to breach it. Or we need him to let us in." Elena's mind was racing now, seeing angles, possibilities. "He hates Adrian, but he hates me more. I humiliated him publicly, stole his daughter. If I offered myself in exchange for stopping the attacks, no." Adrian's voice was flat. "Absolutely not. Hear me out. We make the offer, he agrees to meet, and when he does, you become a hostage or a corpse. Neither is acceptable." Adrian moved to block her path to the displays. "We find another way." "There is no other way. Look at those screens. By noon, you'll have lost half your operation. By tonight, Victor will have won even if it destroys him too." Elena grabbed Adrian's arm. "I can do this. I can get inside, distract him long enough for your team to breach. It's the only play that makes sense." "It's the only play that gets you killed." "Maybe. But if we do nothing, we all lose anyway." She held his gaze. "You taught me to think strategically, to see systems and leverage points. Well, I'm the leverage point. Victor wants me badly enough to take the bait." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Constantine. "If we did this, and I'm not saying we are, how would it work?" What followed was 2 hours of planning that made Elena's stomach churn. Every detail, every contingency, every way it could go catastrophically wrong. But slowly, grudgingly, a plan emerged. Elena would call Victor directly, offer herself in exchange for ceasing the attacks. The meeting would be at his estate, where he'd feel safe. Adrian's team would infiltrate during the exchange, using the distraction to breach the perimeter. Once inside, they'd extract Elena and neutralize Victor, permanently. Simple, clean, absolutely terrifying. "You don't have to do this," Adrian said when they were alone, preparing. He was checking weapons with methodical precision, his expression unreadable. "We can find another way." "No, we can't. We both know it." Elena adjusted the wire they'd hidden under her clothes. Insurance, Constantine called it, though she suspected it was really so they could hear her die if things went wrong. "This is the smart play." "The smart play doesn't involve using my wife as bait." "Your wife." Elena stopped, looking at him. Is that what I am to you now? Actually, your wife, not just a transaction. Adrian's hand stilled on the weapon. I don't know what you are anymore. I thought I did. Thought I had it all figured out. But you keep becoming something different, something more complicated. He met her eyes. All I know is the idea of Victor putting his hands on you makes me want to burn his entire world down. That's just possessiveness, protecting your investment. Is it? He moved closer. Because it feels like something more dangerous than that. Elena's breath caught. They'd been circling this since the kiss on the balcony, this thing growing between them that neither of them wanted to name. Adrian, don't say whatever you're about to say. His hand cupped her face. Because once we name it, we can't take it back. And I need you focused on surviving the next few hours, not on whatever this is becoming. He was right. Elena knew he was right. But when he kissed her, desperate and fierce like it might be the last time, she kissed him back and let herself feel everything she'd been pushing down. The anger, the fear, the strange, twisted thing that might have been love or might have been Stockholm Syndrome or might have been something neither of them had words for. Come back alive, Adrian said against her lips. That's an order. Since when do I follow your orders? Since right now. He pulled away, his expression hardening back into the cold mask he wore for business. Constantine, is the team ready? As ready as we'll ever be for a suicide mission. Encouraging. Elena checked her reflection. She looked calm, composed, exactly like someone walking into a trap should not look. Let's do this before I remember how to be scared. The call to Victor was brief. I want to make a deal, Elena said when he answered. Elena Volkov. I was wondering when you'd contact me. Victor's voice was smug. Ready to beg for mercy? Ready to offer a trade. Me for the attack stopping. You get what you really want. Revenge on the person who destroyed your reputation. I get to save what's left of Adrian's operation. Silence. Then, why would I agree to that? I'm already winning. You're burning everything, including your own credibility. The council won't forgive you starting a war like this. Elena kept her voice level. But if you can show them you retrieved your daughter, punished the people who helped her escape, ended this before it destroyed the entire city's operations, that's leverage. That's power. More silence. Victor was calculating, weighing options. And Adrian agrees to this? Adrian doesn't know. I'm doing this myself. The lie tasted like copper. I have 2 hours before he realizes I'm gone. Take the deal or don't, but decide now. My estate. 1 hour. You come alone, unarmed, or I burn every single one of his holdings to the ground. Done. The line went dead. Elena lowered the phone, her hands shaking now that Victor couldn't see. Constantine was already moving, mobilizing his team. Adrian stood frozen, his expression unreadable. 1 hour, Elena said. That's how long you have to get in position. We'll be ready. Adrian's voice was rough. Just stay alive until we get there. I'll try my best. The drive to Victor's estate felt both endless and too short. Elena sat in the back of an unmarked car, Constantine driving, going over the plan again and again in her head. Get inside, keep Victor talking, wait for Adrian's team, don't die stupidly. Simple goals. Hard execution. Victor's estate rose from manicured grounds like something out of a crime movie. All stone and iron, beautiful and brutal. Guards everywhere, watching her approach with weapons barely concealed. They searched her at the gate, found the wire, crushed it under a boot heel. Nice try, one of them said in accented English. Elena's heart sank. There went the insurance. They walked her to the main house, through rooms decorated with the kind of wealth that came from decades of violence. Victor waited in a study that could have been Adrian's twin. Same power displays, same cold elegance. But where Adrian's office felt controlled, Victor's felt desperate. Elena, Victor gestured to a chair. Sit. We have much to discuss. Where's Irina? Elena remained standing. That was part of the deal. I come here, you stop the attacks, you get your daughter back. My daughter is a traitor who chose exile over family. I don't want her back. Victor's smile was cruel. I lied. I just wanted you. Elena's stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. Then you're stupider than I thought. Adrian will destroy you for this. Adrian is currently watching his empire burn. By the time he realizes where you are, it'll be too late. Victor moved closer. You cost me everything. My reputation, my alliance, my own child's loyalty. Now you'll pay for it. By killing me? That just makes Adrian's retaliation absolute. Who said anything about killing you? Victor's hand shot out, gripping her throat. I'm going to break you. Make you beg. Send pieces of you back to Adrian until he understands what it costs to make an enemy of Victor Kozlov. Elena drove her knee up hard into his groin. Victor went down gasping, and Elena ran. She made it 3 steps before guards grabbed her, slamming her against a wall hard enough to see stars. Victor was back on his feet, fury distorting his features. Stupid girl, you think you can fight your way out? He backhanded her across the face, and Elena tasted blood. You're not leaving this house alive. Then neither are you, Elena said through split lips. What? The explosion came from the south wing, controlled, precise, exactly on schedule. Adrian's team breaching the perimeter right where Constantine had planned. Victor's eyes went wide. What did you do? What you taught me. I used leverage. Elena smiled, bloody teeth and all. You wanted me badly enough to drop your guard. Now you're about to learn why that was a mistake. Gunfire erupted through the house. Victor's guards scattered, trying to defend against the assault. In the chaos, Elena twisted free from the man holding her, using moves Constantine had drilled into muscle memory. She wasn't graceful about it. Her nose was bleeding, her ribs screaming, but she got loose. She ran through corridors that were rapidly filling with smoke and violence, following the sound of Adrian's team advancing. Behind her, Victor was screaming orders, but his people were already breaking. The coordinated assault was too much, too fast. Elena rounded a corner and ran straight into Constantine. You're alive, he said, sounding genuinely surprised. Barely. Where's Adrian? Dealing with Victor's personal guard, this way. They moved through the estate like ghosts, Constantine clearing corners with professional efficiency. They found Adrian in the main hall, surrounded by 3 bodies and breathing hard. Elena? Relief flooded his expression. You're hurt. I'm alive. Victor? Being secured. Adrian moved to her, hands gentle as they checked her injuries. You're bleeding. I'm fine. Did we win? We won. Constantine appeared with Victor in custody. The older man's hands zip-tied, his face promising murder. What do you want done with him? Adrian looked at Victor, then at Elena. Your call. He hurt you. You decide what happens next. Elena stared at Victor, this man who'd kidnapped her mother, attacked them with mercenaries, tried to break her just to hurt Adrian. Every instinct screamed for revenge, for making him pay in blood. But that's not who she wanted to become. Turn him over to the council, she said finally. Let them decide. He violated every rule they have, attacked without authorization, targeted family, destroyed shared infrastructure. They'll handle him worse than we could. Adrian studied her face. You're sure? I'm sure. Elena met Victor's eyes. You wanted to break me. Instead, you just proved I'm stronger than you thought. That's punishment enough. Victor spat at her feet. You'll regret this. Both of you. Maybe. Adrian's hand found Elena's. But you'll regret it more. They left Victor to Constantine's team and walked out of the estate together, into dawnlight that felt like rebirth. Behind them, Victor's fortress burned, not with the destructive chaos he'd tried to unleash, but with the controlled precision of Adrian's people dismantling everything he'd built. The council convened 3 days later to pass judgment. Victor Kozlov was stripped of his territories, his operations, his seat at the table. Everything he'd spent decades building, gone in a single vote. Some whispered he'd be allowed to retire quietly. Others said he'd disappear more permanently. Elena didn't care which. She was done with Victor. What she cared about was the young woman sitting in a coffee shop across town, using a new name and a new identity, smiling like she'd forgotten what fear felt like. Irina, now called Sarah, had chosen a quiet life far from the violence that had defined her childhood. Elena had helped her set it up, had made sure she had resources and protection and choices. That felt like winning. You're different, her mother said when Elena visited her the following week. Catherine Carter had aged in the months since the wedding, lines of worry etched deeper than before. Harder, colder. I'm surviving, Elena said. Is that all you're doing? Her mother's eyes were sad. Because that's not living, sweetheart. That's just existing in a nightmare. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to say she was more than surviving, that she'd found power and purpose in Adrian's world. But looking at her mother's face, this woman who'd lost her daughter to violence and greed, she couldn't force the words out. I don't know what I'm doing, Elena admitted quietly. I know I'm not the person you raised. I know I've done things that would horrify you, but I'm still here, still breathing, and some days that's the best I can manage. Her mother reached across the table, taking Elena's hand. You can still leave. I have some money saved, enough to disappear. I can't leave. Why not? Because she'd become complicit, because she'd helped design operations that hurt people, because she'd kissed Adrian like she meant it, and maybe she had. Because leaving now would mean admitting that everything she'd done, everything she'd become, was for nothing. Because this is my life now, Elena said, for better or worse. Her mother cried, and Elena held her, and neither of them mentioned the wedding vows that had started all of this. Adrian found her that evening on the penthouse balcony, staring at the city lights like they held answers. Your mother left, he said, joining her at the railing. Irina said she was upset. She thinks I'm losing myself to this life. Are you? Elena considered the question. I don't know. The person I was 3 months ago wouldn't recognize who I am now. That person would be horrified by the things I've done, the choices I've made. She turned to face him. Does that make me lost? It makes you adapted. Survival isn't pretty. Adrian's expression was softer than she'd ever seen it. But your mother's not wrong. This life changes people, hardens them, sometimes breaks them. Has it broken you? Parts of me? Yes. The parts that believed in simple morality, in clean solutions. This world doesn't allow for that. He moved closer. But other parts it made stronger, more capable of protecting what matters. And what matters to you? You. He said it simply, like it was obvious. Somewhere between the wedding and now, you stopped being a transaction and started being something I don't have words for, something I'd burn cities to protect. Elena's throat tightened. That's not healthy. No, it's probably the least healthy thing about me. Adrian's hand cupped her face. But it's true anyway. I should hate you, Elena said, leaning into his touch despite herself. You bought me like property, dragged me into a world of violence, made me complicit in things I can't take back. You should. The fact that you don't is probably concerning. Probably. She closed her eyes. But I think I'm too tired to hate you, and too changed to pretend this isn't where I belong now. Adrian pulled her close, and Elena let herself sink into his warmth. It wasn't love, or if it was the kind of love that grew in darkness, twisted and complicated and probably doomed. But it was real, and in this moment, that was enough. What happens now? She asked against his chest. Now we rebuild. Victor's territories are being redistributed, his operations absorbed. The council's asked me to take a larger role in governing the city's underworld. Adrian's voice rumbled through her. It's more power, more responsibility, more danger, and more opportunities to get killed. That too. He pulled back to look at her. Which is why I'm giving you a choice. Elena blinked. What kind of choice? This. Adrian pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, nothing like the ostentatious diamonds most mob wives wore. We've been married legally for months, but that was a transaction, a business arrangement made under duress. Adrian, let me finish. He took the ring out, holding it between them. I'm asking if you want to make it real. Not because your father owed me money, not because I needed a wife for political reasons, but because somewhere in this mess we became partners, because I trust you with my life, my operations, my secrets, because He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Because I want you to choose me, really choose me, knowing everything you know now. Elena stared at the ring, her mind reeling. This was insane. She should say no, should take this opportunity to negotiate an exit, to use his feelings as leverage to get her freedom back. But the truth was, she didn't want her old freedom anymore. That life, her apartment, her job, her safe, predictable existence, felt like it belonged to someone else. A different Elena, one who hadn't learned to see systems and power structures, who hadn't designed operations that toppled crime lords, who hadn't kissed a dangerous man and felt alive for the first time in years. "What exactly are you asking?" she said quietly. "I'm asking you to be my wife. Really. My wife, my partner in this empire we're building. I'm asking you to stop treating this like a prison sentence and start treating it like a choice you're making every day." Adrian's eyes held hers. "I'm asking you to choose this life. Choose me. Not because you have to, but because you want to. And if I say no, then I'll help you disappear. New identity, new city, enough money to start over anywhere you want. No strings, no revenge, no hunting you down. You'd be free." He said it like it cost him something. "Because I meant what I said. I want you to choose this. And that means giving you the option not to." Elena looked at the ring, then at Adrian, then at the city spread out below them. This empire they'd defended together, reshaped together, survived together. She thought about Irina in her coffee shop, free and smiling and safe. That could be her, should be her. But Irina hadn't designed the operation that freed her, hadn't stood in front of a council of criminals and demanded respect, hadn't learned to fight, to strategize, to navigate power structures with precision. Irina had escaped. Elena had conquered. "If I say yes," Elena said slowly, "what does that make me? Complicit? Powerful? Dangerous?" Adrian's slight smile. "Everything you've already become, but with your eyes open about it. I'll be approving operations that hurt people, making choices that destroy lives, building an empire on suffering. Yes, that's the reality of this world." Adrian didn't sugarcoat it. "But you'll also be protecting people who can't protect themselves. Creating order in chaos. Making sure power is wielded intelligently instead of brutally. It's not redemption, but it's not nothing either." Elena knew what her mother would say, what her old self would say, what anyone with functioning morality would say. But she wasn't any of those people anymore. "Ask me again," she said, properly this time. Adrian actually knelt on the balcony floor. "Elena Carter Volkov, will you marry me? Will you choose this life, this empire, this extremely dysfunctional partnership we've built? Will you be my wife, my partner, my equal in everything?" Elena looked at him kneeling there, this dangerous man offering her the one thing she'd thought she'd lost: choice. Real choice, with full knowledge of what it meant. "Yes," she said, and felt something shift inside her, not breaking, but settling into place. "I choose this. I choose you. Not because I have to, but because I've already become someone who belongs here." Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably had her measured weeks ago, planning for this moment even before he knew it would come. "We're probably going to regret this," Elena said, pulling him to his feet. "Almost definitely." He kissed her, and this time there was no desperation, no fear, just certainty. "But we'll regret it together." They stood on the balcony as the city breathed below them. Millions of lives, millions of choices, all of them interconnected in ways most people never saw. But Elena saw them now, saw the systems, the power structures, the delicate balance of violence and order that kept everything running. And she understood, finally, what Adrian had been trying to teach her all along. Power wasn't about control. It was about choice. The choice to act or not act, to build or destroy, to become the person circumstances demanded, or the person you decided to be. She'd chosen. For better or worse, she'd chosen. 6 months later, Elena stood in front of a different mirror, wearing a different wedding dress. This one she'd picked herself, simple, elegant, hers in ways the first dress never was. Her mother sat behind her, still sad but accepting. Irina had sent flowers and a note that said simply, "Thank you for teaching me that freedom is a choice worth fighting for." The ceremony was small. Just Adrian's inner circle, a few council members, the people who mattered. No cathedral full of strangers, no performance for witnesses who didn't care, just vows spoken with clear eyes and full knowledge of what they meant. "I, Elena, take you, Adrian, to be my husband," she said, and meant every word. "To stand beside you, not beneath you. To build this empire together for better or worse. To choose you every day, knowing exactly who you are and what that makes me." Adrian's vows were similar, honest, complicated, real. When the priest said, You may kiss your bride, Adrian leaned in close. Second thoughts? He whispered. Hundreds, but I'm doing this anyway. He laughed and kissed her, and Elena kissed him back in front of people who understood exactly what kind of alliance they were witnessing. Not a fairy tale, not a romance, just two damaged people choosing to face the darkness together instead of alone. The reception was held at the penthouse, overlooking the city they ruled together. Constantine made a toast about survival and strategy. Dmitri told embarrassing stories about Adrian's early mistakes. Elena's mother cried and tried to be happy, and Elena stood beside her husband, really her husband now, and felt something that might have been peace, or might have been just exhausted acceptance. Either way, it was hers. Regrets? Adrian asked when they had a quiet moment. Elena thought about the girl who'd walked down the aisle months ago, terrified and helpless. Thought about everything she'd done since. The operations designed, the violence accepted, the choices made. Thought about Irina free, Victor broken, an empire reshaped. No, she said honestly. No regrets. Just choices I own. Good. Adrian pulled her close. Because we're just getting started. And they were. Elena knew that. Knew there would be more challenges, more violence, more moments where she'd have to decide what kind of person she wanted to be. Knew her mother would probably never fully forgive her. Knew parts of herself would remain horrified by what she'd become. But she also knew she was stronger than the girl who'd been sold to pay her father's debts. Knew she could navigate systems that most people didn't even know existed. Knew she'd found partnership in the last place she expected to find it. That wasn't redemption, wasn't even particularly healthy. But it was power and choice, an agency in a world designed to strip all three away from women like her. So when Adrian asked, "Ready for whatever comes next?" Elena smiled. Not the scared smile of a victim, but the fierce smile of someone who'd learned to bite back. "Bring it on," she said. "We'll handle it together." And as the city lights blazed below them, two people who'd been forced together by circumstance stood side by choice, ready to face whatever darkness came next. Not because they were good people, not because they were heroes, but because they'd learned that survival, real survival, meant becoming dangerous enough that the world had to respect you, even if it could never love you. That was the truth Elena had learned in Adrian's world. That was the choice she'd made. And strangely, terrifyingly, honestly, she wouldn't take it back. Because some prisons you escape from, and some you learn to rule. Elena had chosen the latter, and in that choice, she'd found a kind of freedom that her old life had never offered. The freedom to be exactly who she'd become. Flaws, violence, power and all.